Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing? I was gonna say we have a lot to get through today. We kind of do and we kind of don't. So here's the thing. Last time, I had made that little schedule of who we were gonna cover on every different day, every different Monday, and we were supposed to cover today Rosalia, Sabrina Carpenter, Billie Eilish, I think Lizzo, and then maybe Doja Cat. I don't really remember exactly who was on that list because there have been some changes. Um, so I had started making the slides for everybody. But once I got to Miss Sabrina, I realized that I had quite a lot to say, and there was a lot that I wanted to cover. So instead of doing all the other girlies today is just Sabrina Carpenter. Along with, updates. And you know what, it's fine. It works out because we did have the 15th here as sort of like an updates day. So we had a day that we didn't have any specific person scheduled. So what I've done is I've just kind of pushed a bunch of people down here to next week. And then the week after that, we'll do it. Tate McRae, Addison Rae, Haley Williams, Lily Allen, because those four are already going to have a fair amount of stuff in their slides. So makes sense for just the four of them. And then the week after that, the week that was just supposed to be updates, we're just shoving all the boys there. And then if we have to cut a boy, oh well. But so that's currently the plan. So my apologies to Rosalia, Lizzo, Billie Eilish, and Doja Cat. I think Lorda maybe moved up here. I don't think she was on the schedule for last week, but this is just Sabrina's episode now. So that's what it is. But we do, of course, still have to do updates because things have happened. Other people are still doing stuff. People we've already added to the list. And we do have, some dishonorable mentions. Some non-pop girlies who I just wanted to shit talk just because I wanted to. So, first of all, I want to shit talk Sydney Sweeney a little bit. Again, not really like go in on her. She hasn't done anything new, but I did just think this was funny and I kind of wanted to rub it in. So after her whole thing about, not wanting to say whether or not she is a white supremacist, which is crazy, many people have sort of publicly side-eyed her, deservedly so, including this woman who I guess is on Love Island. I don't know who this woman is, but I guess she did some sort of promotional thing for The Housemaid, which is a movie coming out, directed by Paul Feig, and then also starring Amanda Seyfried and Sydney Sweeney, unfortunately. So sorry to Amanda and Paul. I don't know how this woman is involved. Apparently she is. I don't know if she's in the movie or if she's just doing like promotional stuff for it. But she did something with Sydney Sweeney, and then someone wrote a comment. They're like, "Why are you doing videos with Sydney?" And she responded, "It's almost like I have a contract with Lionsgate, not Homegirl." So even the people actively doing promotional stuff with Sydney Sweeney want to make it clear at the moment that that's not really their choice. Interesting, kind of not. And this is what I'm saying too about like, I don't think that we can discount how stupid Sydney Sweeney is. Like, we can do this whole like, oh, she knows exactly what she's doing thing all we want. She clearly doesn't know what she's doing because she is fucking up her career. She did not exist in a place, she did not have a career in which the kinds of things that she was saying really fly. The audience that she was courting with her work is not the audience that she seems to be courting in some of her, other ventures. So she is just genuinely stupid. And now people that work in the same industry as her and that have to do promo with her don't even want to do promo with her anymore because she is kind of comfortable with people thinking that she's a white supremacist, which is very odd. very, very odd. And if you're comfortable with people thinking that you're a white supremacist, you're probably a white supremacist. You know? Like, that maybe is something that you should care enough about to want to clear up. Oh well. Then also this motherfucker. So first of all, imagine fumbling Nicole Kidman. Imagine being married to Nicole Kidman and then fucking it up. Already some loser shit. There were already some rumors that he had moved on to another woman, like, immediately, which is crazy. I don't know how you move on from Nicole Kidman, especially when she was married to you that entire time, when your hair has looked that way 100% of the time. He has never grown out of this hairstyle, neither in cut or in terrible, chunky highlights. You have no idea who this man is. That's fine. It's Keith Urban. He's a country singer, but he's also Australian, so it's like... It's one thing when someone from America decides to go the route that he's going. It's another thing when someone from just a fully separate country is like, I want to get in on that. And not only does he do, like, stereotypical country music, country pop, and I don't listen to Keith Urban, so I don't know if his music is, like, good. I kind of assume that it's just not because of the genre that he's in. And not that I hate country music fully. There are country songs that I like, but just kind of like in the radio country pop arena that he's in, generally not my vibe. So I assume that Keith Urban does not make music that I'm particularly interested in. I was somewhat like... He was endeared to me by the fact that he was Nicole Kidman's husband. And I like Nicole Kidman. So I was kind of like, okay, cool. Love that. Love Keith Urban. But now that he's not her husband anymore, it's like, you're on borrowed time. But so not only did he divorce, he is now separated from Nicole recently, as of this year, a couple months ago, which I was sad by at first because they seemed to have a good relationship. Like, I was kind of bummed at first, but now, guess what he did? He performed at Mar-a-Lago, where Donald Trump was president. He performed for Donald fucking Trump. And he performed a cover of Pink Pony Club by Chappell Roan. What? You couldn't sing one of your own fucking songs? One of your country songs that probably at least fit that vibe a little more than Pink Pony Club? Can she sue? I don't know if she can sue for that, but if I were her, I'd be looking into it. What the hell? Ugh. I don't even understand. Like, again, it's like you're not even American. I get sometimes, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. But like, I'm like, okay, you have like some plausible deniability when you're an American who's performing for the president, because then it's like, well, it's just an honor to perform for the president of the United States. It's an honor for our country, blah, blah, blah. It's not an honor when it's a fascist, for one thing. But okay, you have some plausible deniability there, because it's like, okay, he's the leader of your country. You don't even go here. You're Australian. Go perform for, like, whoever the Prime Minister of Australia is. I don't even know. You're gonna come to America to perform for our fascist leader? Yeah, probably still not as crazy as fumbling Nicole Kidman. Yeah, kinda. But I think it's a part of, it's a part of a pattern. It's a very divorced man thing to do, to perform for the president. Oy, gross. And then also, speaking of other people doing things for the president, here's Nicki Minaj, who really isn't like an honorary pop girly or honorary flop. Like, she is a pop girly. She should be. Has she released anything this year musically, or has she just gotten into fights on Twitter? I don't think I've heard any music from her whatsoever. It seems like she's just sort of been busy being like an internet troll. But okay, whatever. So Nicki Minaj might might have released some music this year. Maybe she qualified for the pop girly bracket, but she's also, I'm not putting her on at this point because at this point she's just kind of known for her extracurricular activity. She endorsed Andrew Cuomo in 2018. That's interesting, but I guess not surprising. She loves a man who assaults women for some reason. But she spoke at the UN on behalf of the Trump administration for, like, she's talking about Christian persecution in Nigeria, which, from my understanding, from what I've read, is not real. Like, there are Christians being persecuted in Nigeria, but not necessarily because of their Christianity, and they're not being persecuted any more than, like, the Muslims that live in that area. So it very much just seems like a bit of our own Christian nationalism coming, inspiring our concerns about the Christians in Nigeria. But whatever, she chose to speak at this UN meeting for the Trump administration, which is already just gross. And then also her fucking fans who have I mean, of course, they're just as nasty as she is at this point because they're following her. They, like, this is some pop-based updates, like some parody account that's, like, also a barb or something. And they wrote, Nicki Minaj makes history as the first female rapper to speak proper English at a political convention. Others have spoken broken English or twerked instead of using their voices. Which is just literally, like, trying to, like, hype Nicki up by being misogynistic and racist toward other women. Because they're just using, like, racist stereotypes about black women to make a hit at Cardi B, who spoke at some sort of rally for Kamala Harris. I literally almost forgot Kamala Harris's name. She ran for president like a year ago. Ugh. But, like, Cardi had done some speech, and then people were she flubbed some of the stuff that she was saying. She was reading off a teleprompter and then couldn't read it properly and then got nervous. It was really just it was just an endearing, not endearing, but, like, it's just a thing that, like, it's very relatable of, like, you're speaking publicly in front of a huge crowd of people and you fuck up a few words. And then the other person that they're referencing here is Megan Thee Stallion, who also did something for Kamala's campaign where she, I think, performed and then was twerking during the performance. So it's like, do you have to do this? Even when your queen speaks in front of the UN, you have to make it about other black women? That's crazy. That's not real pop base, right? No, this is like a pop base parody account. Yeah. Just awful. But that's Nicki's audience at this point. And of course it is, because that's how she acts all the time. But then our other updates. So, trailer dropped for The Moment, which is Charlie XCX's new movie. It's like, it seems kind of like a mockumentary type thing about the press that she got from Brat, and then I guess just mostly that, just sort of about the Brat campaign. I knew The Moment was something that was more kind of like meta like that. I didn't know that it was something, though, where it was like they were going to be directly referencing Brat and that she was playing herself. I guess, I don't know, but I wasn't closely following the updates for this movie. I didn't really know what it was about, but now I understand. And it looks good. It looks fun. She's got like 5 different movie things lined up, though, I think for next year, so she really is putting in the work. But I think that maybe, it seems like some of this was filmed during the Brat promo, so they probably filmed this a while ago. but it looks really cool. Yeah, and then I've been reading Charlie's Substack and it's really good. Yeah, I did want to shout out her Substack too because, well, it's like I guess I'm glad that like the girlies have some sort of outlet because she's not the only person that's done some stuff on Substack recently. But I do just miss when in like the early 2000s when singers would use their websites as like a blog. Like this is cool that it's on Substack, but there's a part of me that's like, why can't some of this stuff just go onto your website? Why don't you just have like a blog feature on your website? But it's okay. People are getting onto the Substack thing. So it's like, I don't know. I miss websites. I miss real websites. But yeah, she wrote this big long thing that was really interesting. She is definitely she's contemplating what it means to be a star at this level in a way that is very interesting. So, I am very excited to watch this film. It looks very good. It's like Alexander Skarsgård is in it. That's crazy. Kylie Jenner, that one doesn't really surprise me. But what's Alexander gonna do? He kind of is like an honorary pop girly too. Like he's in this thing with Charlie. He was in the paparazzi music video for Gaga. I took my sweater off because I was getting a little warm, but then the second I took it off, I was already cold again. Then also still continued promo for Wuthering Heights. I think they released another trailer. I haven't watched the second trailer yet, but there's some billboards and stuff up for it. So it's just interesting to me how even when she's just doing the soundtrack, and I guess saying just the soundtrack, like doing a soundtrack for a movie is obviously a big deal if you're doing like an entire album's worth of music. But it's funny because I feel like she didn't do this much promo for Bottoms, and she did the music on that too. But she is just so integrated into this Wuthering Heights promo in ways that I wasn't really expecting. Shit, I pressed. I didn't think that she was gonna get that involved in the Wuthering Heights shit, but I'm loving it, and I'm excited for the movie. I think I'm gonna love it. I think it's gonna be very, very good. And then, so last time I mentioned that Pink Pantheress and Zara Larsson were teasing some sort of like big special thing they were doing together. I don't know if this is it, if this was all they were referring to, but they did an interview with each other, like Interview Magazine. They always pair up like two people who are like in the same industry or in similar industries or something, and then have them interview each other. So this is Zara Larsson and Pink Pantheress interviewing one another. Mostly, I think Pink was interviewing Zara. Nicole Kidman interviewed Ariana Grande recently. So this was very cute to see, and especially at the end here where they're talking about being at the Grammys together. They're talking about what they're up for. And Zara says, I think we both want to win really badly, but if it's not me, I really want it to be you. Pink says, I mean, there's another Grammy that I'm up for, which is the album, and that's the one I would love. But the dance pop record, I actually genuinely don't want my song to win. I want Midnight Sun, because that song is just so much more interesting than my song. It's such progressive pop. It's really, really good. And then Zara says, I feel like it's going to be such a fun year for us, 2026. And Pink Panther says, I hope so, girl. And it is just nice. It's nice to see the girls, like, being so positive toward one another, and also hearing them say like it's going to be such a fun year for us. Like, I don't know, it's nice that they're kind of in it together. It was the same thing with last year when Chappell Roan and Sabrina Carpenter were talking about how they had sort of talked behind the scenes because they were both coming up at like the same time. It's nice that these girls because it's like when Brittany and Christina were coming up at the same time, that was not really the vibe. It was not like a we're in this together. Hopefully this will be a great year for us. Let's go, girl. It was more of like a who's going to win best new artist, and the person who wins is automatically better than the other person, and it was always just like a feeling of competition between the girls. And there is, I think a fair amount of competition is still good, but it is nice to see them supporting one another. But I was still like, was that the big surprise? You had to, you had to do that teasing at your concert for an interview? That's it's fine, it's cute. Maybe they're doing more stuff together and this is just like one of the first things, but they didn't mention anything else that I saw about them working on something else together. So I don't know, maybe that whole thing at the concert was literally just for this interview. Then Ray has been doing a lot more like late night-y stuff. She's been appearing on different TV shows. Not even just late night shows. I think she's maybe done some like afternoon shows too. But this is where, because I was wondering before, because like I said, my mom got onto the Ray bandwagon before I did. I didn't really totally know who Ray was. And then my mom was already just obsessed with her. And I was like, that's interesting because my mom is usually the person who she watches so much more TV than me. So she's always up to date with what's happening on television, but she doesn't follow pop music as closely as I did. So I was like, how the fuck did she get to Ray before I did? And then I thought about it. I was like, I think it's because Ray does late night shows. She does TV stuff fairly often, and that's how you get them. And I do just think that that is worth saying and putting into the universe in case any future pop girlies or current pop girlies are watching this stream. You gotta do the late night shows. You gotta do the morning shows too. You gotta get onto TV. I know it in some ways maybe feels retro, like too anachronistic to some degree of like who's even watching late night TV anymore, but like a lot of people, that is kind of still where the general public gets their like pop culture recommendations. You gotta do it. You can't just be on your Discord. You can't just be doing stuff online. You gotta, yeah, and exactly. Her style of music also appeals to moms, for sure. It is definitely the right audience for her. But it's like, if you want to get that general public attention, you gotta get onto the TVs. It is still an important medium. Speaking of maybe doing a little bit more promo outside of your Discord, though. So, FKA Twigs did Rolling Stone in the UK. There aren't like a whole lot of updates with FKA Twigs, but I'm almost sort of getting caught up. And I do appreciate this because I didn't read the whole interview yet, but I read most of this interview. And one thing that I like about it is the fact that since she's released Afterglow, she's not just promoting Afterglow, she is also still just promoting Eusexua. And I'm like, okay, that's good because Eusexua did get kind of fucked over earlier in the year with some of the mistakes being made in her promo campaign. It got kind of tossed to the side a little bit by a lot of people. And I think that it's nice that the Afterglow release is in part just like reinvigorating the Eusexua promo. But then this is almost an illustration of the problem though, because I didn't know. I just found this out because people were talking about this on Twitter. So when Eusexua was released, it got a really great review from Pitchfork. She got a 9.1, which is very, very good, especially from Pitchfork. And then people started talking about that again because now that she's released Afterglow, they kind of re-scored it, re-reviewed it, and now it has an 8.1 instead of that 9, or 8.0 instead of a 9.1. And then the Afterglow has a 7.4. And people were like, how can you're re-reviewing it all these months later and giving it a lower score. Now, I do want to point out, for one thing, that the person who wrote the 9.1 review is a different reviewer. It's a different critic than who wrote the 8.0 review. So just because it's the same publication doesn't mean it's the same critic. It's not the same person giving it a new score. But something that I didn't know, and this is kind of like, this is where I'm like, there's some issues with the promo here. I didn't realize that when she released Afterglow, she released a new version of Eusexua with some new songs on it, but also some songs removed from it. So it is almost like a new album now, but it's, I guess, still under the exact same name. Like, it doesn't, there's no way other than to see the different album covers. There's no way to know on Spotify if you're listening to the right version because they're just both named Eusexual. You just have to pay attention to the album cover, which that confuses me too because I've seen multiple different album covers for Afterglow and I'm like, are there different versions of Afterglow now? Like, now I just feel lost. Now I feel like I don't even know what's going on. So, what? Why? And why, like, I feel like that wasn't talked about a whole lot. I had no idea that Eusexual just has a different version now, and I haven't listened to the new version yet. I've only heard the version that came out in January. It's just still so messy. But that's okay. I mean, the mess is, I guess, almost just endearing, in a sense. Yeah, confusing the consumer is part of the plan, maybe. But it's a strange plan. It's a plan that I've never quite seen work out for anybody. But okay, I mean, it's not like it's totally the first time anyone's done something like this. Yeah, Gaga also added songs to Mayhem. She did, and that also annoyed me because that one doesn't even have a different album cover. That's just like, I have to look at the track list to see which version of Mayhem I'm listening to. But at least that's just added songs. She didn't take songs off of Mayhem and then put different ones on. Like, taking the songs off of an album is kind of crazy. But there are people have done similar things before. Like, when Kanye West released Life of Pablo, wasn't that a thing too? Of like, it was supposed to be an album that was released while it was still being like edited. Like, some of the mixes changed from when he first uploaded it to then a couple months later. So, I mean, that's an interesting tactic to just continuously change your album after you've already released it. But again, it's like, I just think that should have been a little bit more clear to the audience. Because I had no fucking idea that there was just a new version of Eusexua. But okay. Okay. And then another big update, Hilary Duff has now announced her new album officially. It's called Luck ... or something, which is a great name. I guess it's in reference to when people ask her, like, how did you turn out so it's weird to say good. How did your life turn out not quite as chaotic as plenty of other young starlets in the industry? You know, there's the whole thing about like all these other Disney stars go insane at some point or have some like huge moment of rebellion where they maybe kind of lean very heavily into like a bad girl thing to try to change their public image. And Hillary never really did that, and she never had like a public breakdown or anything. She kind of just sort of very smoothly transitioned into an adult career, given that she started literally on the Disney Channel. And she was like the first one. She was the person that sort of created this Disney Channel pop star archetype. And people have, it's always been like a thing of like, how did Hillary wind up being so level-headed compared to a lot of her peers? And her answer for that is like, I don't know, luck or something, which is it's a good title. It's good. I do think the album cover is a little, I think I would have liked it a few years ago, but at this point, this is kind of what every girl is doing, including our main girly of the night, Miss Sabrina Carpenter. Her album cover is literally just her, like, in a room. Like, that's what all the album covers look like at this point. It's just a girl just, like, sitting in a room that it almost looks kind of liminal in a sense. There's not a whole lot going on in the room. There's just, like, a wall behind them and some curtains. And so at this point, I'm like, all right, I need the girls to start doing something different with the album covers. But she looks good. She looks very good. And there also is another version. There's one variant where it's like literally just a screenshot from the Mature music video. Very Britney 2016 coded with the album cover of Glory. But the variant is going to have two new versions of some of her old songs. I don't remember which ones it was. I think one was Wake Up, I think. Like a Wake Up Hillary's version. And I don't remember what the other one was. Maybe So Yesterday? But I'm sure those will go on to streaming at some point. But for the moment, they are like a vinyl variant exclusive. But they'll probably go on to streaming, I have to imagine. And then something else I just wanted to shout Hillary out for, but mostly I just wanted to take the opportunity to talk about this. I guess there was this video from the Starbucks union stuff on Instagram, and Hillary liked it. So Hillary has now shown her support for striking Starbucks workers, and as a former Starbucks worker myself, I very much appreciate it because fuck Starbucks so hard. I hate that company. And I always will for the rest of my life. So I did just want to show this video that Hillary liked just for the sake of supporting my fellow partners, because that's what they call us when you work at Starbucks. You're not an employee, you're a partner, because Starbucks is incredibly culty and nasty corporation.
Behind me is the largest Starbucks distribution center in the world. It's one of just 5 in the country, and a key choke point for all the coffee giants' deliveries in the entire Northeast.
Right now, we have the facility under a full blockade. We've turned away multiple trucks already. What we're doing is directly attacking the supply chain of Starbucks, disrupting the operations for every store in the entire Northeast. This facility delivers all of the supplies that we need to run our stores every day.
We're fighting for our very first contract after 4 years of negotiations with the company.
They have the full capacity to pay us right now for a multi-year union contract with 1 day worth of sales. They can do it for less than what they paid Brian Nickel for the 4 months of work he did.
We've filed over 1,000 unfair labor practice charges. Brian and the company have rolled out policy after policy that actually make the workflow harder, that make the wait times longer, that exacerbate that understaffing problem. They've begun to discipline workers more, roll out new policies that workers aren't able to meet. These corporations do think that they're unstoppable, but we know that our power comes from the fact that we run these stores every day, that Brian doesn't get his salary in his private jet without us. But we know that we have the power, and we know that that's where our leverage actually is.
I work at Chestnut Hill in Philadelphia. We are actually one of the first Starbucks to open in Philadelphia. Most of our customers have been going there for almost over 2 decades, so we really have this tight-knit group of people. I miss them every day, but they know that we're here for a bigger, better reasons. You guys do not give Starbucks any of your money. No money to Brian Nickel, please. He has had enough. He has $96 million for 4 months of work. I think he can take the hit.
Brian, I'm going to look at the camera because I'm speaking to you and I know you're watching. This company is in crisis. Everybody knows it. The shareholders know it. You're the fourth CEO we've worked under since we started organizing 4 years ago. Something's wrong. Customers are leaving. Wait times are long. You're trying everything in the book except for actually listening to the workers who run your stores, who pay your salary. So if you want to fix this company, settle a contract with us.
Union power! Union power! Union power! No contract! No coffee! No contract! No coffee! No contract! No coffee!
Yeah, fuck Starbucks. I saw someone say, I don't know that I've ever met someone who looks back at their time at Starbucks positively. Yeah. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. I hate the company for sure, but I have like Starbucks ornaments on my tree right now because that was like, it does mean a lot to me because that was where I met some of my like best friends. And I would say that I always felt so close with the other people that worked at Starbucks. And to a point where, like, even still, if I find out that someone else worked at Starbucks, I'm like, oh, we're bonded. We're family, essentially. Which is a weird, like, culty thing of, like, feeling like other people that just work for the same company as you are, like, bonded by some, like, thing bigger than you. But it is kind of how I feel because it's like we were all so trauma bonded. Like at the store that we worked in, like we all were like, we were genuinely trauma bonded. I have nightmares about that place. I have nightmares that I'm like behind the bar getting yelled at or like having a whole bunch of customers staring at me because I've got like 50 mobile orders that are all behind and fucking Olga, the district manager, won't let me goddamn turn the mobile orders off. They're always changing the rules about when you can get the mobile orders turned off and when you can't. It's just like, it is such an insanely abusive company that like gets away with it somehow. Even though it's like not even... They kept doing stuff where I'm like, you're making the drinks worse. They would change recipes where I'm like, they taste worse now. Like, the whipped cream used to have vanilla in it. Now it doesn't. Now if you get the whipped cream at Starbucks, it's just whipped heavy cream. There's no flavor in it at all. I think it tastes horrible. It's pointless. It used to have like a sweetness to it and now it doesn't. But it's because they kept putting vanilla into every other fucking new drink that they have. So they're like, we're running out of vanilla. It's like, well, yeah, stop introducing new beverages that you're just putting vanilla into. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Yeah, they took the vanilla out of the hot chocolate too. I know. Yeah, now the hot chocolate doesn't taste as good. They just kept making different decisions where I'm like, you're making the fucking drinks worse. Or when they discontinued smoothies, but they waited until the summer to do it. It's like, of all the times you could have discontinued a beverage, why did you choose the season that it's the most popular in? I don't know how they get away with it. I don't know how they keep making money. And especially the way that people go crazy for those fucking red cups. I just hate it. I hate it so much. So yeah, fuck Starbucks. Yeah, rest in peace raspberry syrup too. I know. Those bastards. And they don't even have the turkey stuffing panini anymore. That was the shit. I miss the turkey stuffing panini. I do, and sometimes I have nightmares about Starbucks, and sometimes I have nice dreams where I'm behind the bar making my own beverage or making my own sandwich, because that part I do miss. I miss making myself a beverage, even though you weren't supposed to. You were supposed to just go to the counter and have another barista ring it up, but I did not, and none of us did. We would just go behind the counter and just make our own shit all the time, and that was what made it worth it. That was when it was nice to work at Starbucks, when you're making yourself a little latte. Anyway, Beyonce, this like hair brand that she does, I guess won Brand of the Year at the 2025 Beauty Inc. Awards. To be honest, that kind of sounds like a paid award to me. I don't want to make any accusations, but any sort of beauty award, anything that wins something like that, I'm like, is that even real? Who's voting? What's the criteria? But I guess this is a good brand. I've never used it. I think it's just hair care, right? And I never really even hear anybody talking about it. but I guess it's good. I don't know. Miss Ariana Grande got COVID, which sucks. And for a minute, because I got COVID like 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago now, I don't remember, 2.5. I got COVID a while ago, and I'm like, I feel like I'm just now recovered from it. Like, because there was a while, like 2 whole months of just like a constant feeling in my throat, like a constant soreness, fighting off a cough all the time. It was bad. And for a minute, I was like, oh my God, she has to host SNL in December. That what if her throat still hurts then? And then I remembered, I was like, wait, she's rich. She's definitely getting better treatment than I did. And by that, I mean treatment. I just sat at home. I took Dayquil. She probably has actual, like, doctors helping her. Because I wondered that, too, about Gaga. Because Gaga, and, you know, I hate to talk about it, but she did perform, like, 2 or 3 shows of the Chromatica Ball while having COVID, which she definitely should not have done, but she did do it. And I was like, how did she perform with COVID? Like, that shit kicked my ass, and I don't even think I had it that bad. I don't even think it was, like, that severe of a case for me, but it still kicked my ass. And then I remembered, I was like, well, she's rich. That's how. They get other stuff that we don't get. They go to doctors. They have doctors. But it still sucks. Getting COVID just sucks. So, shout out to Ari. And that guy that assaulted her in Singapore has now been kicked out of Singapore and is banned from re-entering the country, which we love to see that. I don't know where he's from originally, though. I don't think he's from Singapore. And it seems like he's very willing to travel to assault people. So, you know, him not being able to go into one country, I don't know how big of a deal that is, but hopefully he gets banned more in more places, because this man is just a menace. And I've seen other people not show his face because they're like, he just wants attention. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. He does just want attention. But at the same time, I'm like, but he is sort of like a wanted criminal in a sense. Like, if you see this man coming, you at least should know, you know? So at this point, I'm like, yeah, he does just want attention, but we got to get the girlies aware. Look out for this one. If you see that man coming, get security. But yeah, what a fucking weirdo. Dumbass glasses, too. And then Wicked for Good has come out. I saw it yesterday. It's fine. I would like to, and I'm not going to do it right now, because first of all, I downloaded the movie, not for good, but the first movie, Wicked, and I'm just redoing the color grading throughout the entire thing. I can't post that anywhere, obviously, because of, you know, copyright stuff, but I just want it for myself so that I can watch a version of the movie that I think looks a little bit better. But I think once I'm done with that, and I'll probably also do part 2 as well for my own personal viewing pleasure, I might do like a review of the movies on probably the Deluxe Edition channel, something more casual. But I have a lot to say about it because I was a Wicked girly. I kind of still am. I'm not like a theater girly in general. I don't watch a lot of like theater stuff, and so I don't pay a lot of attention to like, you know, I don't know the names of everyone who's ever played Glinda and Elphaba or whatever, but I saw the play when I was like 12 or 13-ish. I saw it in Chicago, and I loved it. I loved it so much. The second that I saw it, it was like burned into my memory. I bought the soundtrack on CD, and then when I got my first iPod, that was like one of the first things I put onto my iPod was the Wicked soundtrack. So I do have a lot of fondness for the play. I do think that there are problems in the play in terms of, especially part 2 with the pacing. but I've always loved it, and I've always like been like, I can't fucking wait until someone makes a movie out of this, because they have to at some point. Like, there's just not really an option. You have to make a movie out of this. So I've been looking forward to this movie for my entire life, it feels like. And there are things about it that I really, really do love. And there are other things that I do not love. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the conversations around the movie change in the next few years. Because I think that part of it got a lot of hype and it got a lot of love for a while. And I think a big reason behind that is that it just, like, the promotional material, and even from when the casting was announced and everything, it was like, you feel sort of, there is almost like a parasocial thing attached to it of like getting to see these actors who clearly care so much about the project, especially like Ariana. If you've been following Ariana, she has talked in interviews openly before, years before getting cast, about like, Glinda is my dream role. That is, I will do anything to get that role in that movie. I want to play Glinda so bad. And so getting to see her get cast and then seeing her take on that job and all of it, like, it was very just sort of heartwarming of like, oh my God, she has wanted that so bad for her whole life. And she's doing very well at it. And then also, like, Cynthia, too. You know, Ariana, I think, I wouldn't say that she's doing a full Kristen Chenoweth impression, but it is very, her portrayal is very similar to Kristen Chenoweth, and it's very similar to, like, the way that Glinda has been traditionally been played. Cynthia really feels like she has brought something new to the role. And there are aspects of Idina's performance that I kind of miss. Like, I think that Idina got a little bit harder. She was a little bit more, like, actually wicked in a few moments, whereas Cynthia has actually brought a lot more, like, vulnerability and a lot more softness to the character. But I love the way that Cynthia portrays this role. I think that she has the best performance of the entire cast. And the entire cast is great. I don't think there's a bad performance. Well, actually, there's one performance that I don't love a whole lot, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. But the whole cast is great. And Cynthia, I think, is, like, the best. So it's been really exciting to see all that, and to get to see these two women who care so much about the project, and also everyone else who cares about the project. And John Chu, too. Like, I don't love all the decisions that he made as a director. But when I see him in interviews, he seems so nice. He seems like a kind person. He seems like he was a very good director for these actors to be working with. He worked with the actors very well. I don't agree with some of the decisions he made just like from a filmmaking standpoint, but in terms of directing the story, he did very, very well. And it's nice to hear him in the promo interviews and stuff talk. It is just very heartwarming to be like, wow, look at all these people who care so much about this project. I feel like once we get past that a little bit, once we're a little bit more separated from the promo campaign, maybe we can start being a little bit more honest about the quality of the movie, the two movies. Because, like, there are just some choices made here that I just wish had not been made. But all in all, it's been a very fun ride. And I will watch the second one again, probably soon-ish. And I have to say, here's the thing about everything that I just said about, there are choices that they made that I wish they had made different choices. However, I think all the changes that they made from part 2 of the play to part 2 of the movie, I think all the changes worked. I think all the changes did improve the story quite a bit, because there are just some really glaring pacing issues in part 2 of the play that the movie starts overcoming. You know, like, there was a while where I was like, holy shit, I think they've basically fixed this. And then it got to a certain moment, and then I was like, oh no, they didn't. No, they didn't. This is still bad. But all the changes that they made within the, like, I can't think of anything that they changed from the play to the movie that I think was a bad idea. I think all the changes were good. And I liked the 2 songs that they add. Well, they made a whole thing about they were adding 2 new like original songs to part 2 that weren't in the play. And they did do that. They also added some other stuff too. Like, Thank Goodness went from being its own like one song, and then it kind of got split into 2 songs of Everyday More Wicked and then Thank Goodness, and they added a lot of stuff in the Everyday More Wicked that I liked. I thought worked really well. It flowed perfectly. It was really great. Part of my big issue with the movie is that both movies, is that I don't think that John Chu thought enough about what a movie looks like, or what a movie sounds like, or how a movie works and how that's different from the play. It felt like they really just wanted to bring the play to life and film it, and not actually utilize this new medium where you can do different stuff. You know, like, there's just a lot of shit where I'm like, why? Obviously the color grading is an issue, the lighting is an issue. There are some audio issues in it too because of the amount that I think Ariana and Cynthia really, really wanted to. It was important for them to be singing live and for them to use the live takes. And I get that, and I think it works most of the time. But then there are moments where it doesn't work at all. And there's just stuff where I'm like, maybe you should have done like a studio recording. Like, I know that it was important to them so that they felt like they were living in the characters, but this is a movie. So, you know, you are in a different medium, and maybe sometimes that's okay to play to the strengths of that medium instead of just trying to recreate the play, you know? But with part 2, there was a lot of stuff that they changed. Where I was like, okay, they're changing it because this is a movie and this makes more sense for the movie. So that was good. I really, really liked both the 2 new songs that they did, especially the one that Cynthia did, No Place Like Home, because it felt more, it felt like they were sort of playing into the allegory of it a little bit more, you know, like the rising fascism in Oz versus the rising fascism in the United States. It felt poignant. You know, the song No Place Like Home is a song about loving the place that you live in despite it not always loving you, and wanting to fight for a better Oz, whereas, you know, in real life, many of us are trying to fight for a better America. And it's felt very complicated to be an American recently, so I did just sort of appreciate the catharsis of that song in that way. So everything they added was good. Everything they changed was good. Where it really lost me, though, because I know that there were a lot of people who didn't love the fact that they were splitting it into 2 movies. I liked the idea. I was like, I think that that's a better idea to split these into 2, because then you can like really draw part 2 out and fix some of those pacing issues. They almost did. But my hot take is this should have been a 3-part movie. Maybe this shouldn't have been a movie at all. Maybe this should have been a mini-series, actually. I know it would suck because you would have to add a lot more songs, because obviously all the like best songs are in part 1. But they still needed to add a lot more. Especially for me. I don't want to get into spoilers too much at all. I'm not going to get into spoilers at all. If you haven't seen the movie, if you don't know what it is, if you've never seen the play, like you don't know how stuff connects to Sound of Music or anything, I don't want to give anything away. But there's just a part, for me, the biggest issue, there are some issues throughout the whole thing, some little things that I wish they had changed, but where it really becomes glaring to me of like, okay, they needed a part 3. They needed to play this out way longer. It's right after No Good Deed. When it cuts from No Good Deed and what happens in No Good Deed, what Elphaba is doing in No Good Deed. And then suddenly the next scene is the end pretty much of Wizard of Oz. It doesn't, I'm like, stop. Dorothy has now gone down the yellow brick road in its entirety. But a certain character wasn't even in place yet until after what Elphaba does in No Good Deed. No. We should see. I'm wondering if it's like, there are issues with the licensing, I know, and the copyright, because Wizard of Oz, the movie, doesn't go into the public domain until I think like 10 years. I think we got 10 years for it to go into the public domain. But Wizard of Oz, the book, is in the public domain. So you can use anything from the book. You can incorporate anything from The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the book, which I've never read, so I don't even know how different it is from the movie. But anything that's original to the movie, you can't use. So that's why in the movie she has like the silver shoes instead of the ruby shoes, because the silver shoes are from the book and the ruby shoes are from the movie. But so I don't know, I'm like, do they just not want to touch too much stuff from The Wizard of Oz because they don't want to get into any sort of legal battle with MGM if they accidentally like use an element that was from the movie and not from the book? But I'm like, but how? It all originates from the book, so I just feel like it wouldn't be that hard to just incorporate stuff from the book. You should just include more of the Wizard of Oz in the movie, because at some point it just becomes so confusing of like, well, how the fuck did all that happen then? How did we get from No Good Deed to the scene that follows it when I know that there's an entire movie in between those moments, you know? And I can kind of put the dots together because I've seen The Wizard of Oz. But even then I'm like, well, but how did any of that stuff make sense? And it's not even just about it making sense, it's about like the world building for me. There's a lot of stuff where I'm like, I don't totally get the conclusions that the characters are coming to based on what they've shown in the movie and what they showed in the play. And this, again, movie version is better than the play version in this instance, because there are still some things that they show in the movie where I'm like, okay, that actually does give me some more like exposition of like what's happening in this world. But I just don't think that they do enough world building. I don't think that you see enough of Oz in general. And yeah, it just, I'll save it for whenever I do a video just on Wicked and on these two movies specifically. But I do have a lot to say. But other than that, it was good. And it is better than the play for part 2. At least. That being said, what is happening here? This is the cover for the soundtrack. It's hideous. What in the graphic design is my passion is this? Some of the promo material for this shit just looks disgusting. Like, what the hell? And I know that Cynthia got upset when those people edited the poster and made it like so that the hat was covering the eyes, more like the traditional poster for the play. And I get, she was like, you're erasing me or whatever. I understand kind of why she would be defensive about it, but I'm also like, but girl, these posters suck. The posters that are being put out for these films are just grody looking. Why? Why do they look like that? So I don't blame any fans for trying to fix it. But yeah, the movie was decent. And yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that like this, I'm glad we had this journey. These 2 years of promo for the movies have been very fun. Lots of memes, lots of moments, lots of feelings. We've watched this friendship between these two women evolve into something that does seem kind of strange, kind of weird and codependent, but also is very endearing, and I am excited to see Cynthia appearing on Ariana's tour. I'm excited to see where their friendship goes after this, so I am ultimately very glad that this exists. But I do wish the movies were a little different. But you know what? Here's the thing. Again, Wizard of Oz goes into the public domain, the movie, in 2035. We can even try again. We can do more stuff. We can do another Wicked movie. People will not like it. People will be very defensive about the fact that they're making a new one. But I'm like, but I just still think there's something there. I think there really is something very interesting about this franchise that I would like to see explored to a degree that's better than the play, that's better than these two movies, that actually like really gets into the universe. I've never read the books, the Wicked books. I know they're very, very different. So to me, I'm like, I don't even care. If they're that different, it's not the same to me. I don't care. I want to see this story, the base of this story, the bones of this story being given a little bit more. I'd like to see us add a little bit more. We can add a whole other movie into it. And again, it's like we don't have to do a movie. We can do a mini-series. We can do like a 5-part series on HBO or Netflix or anything. The possibilities are endless. I guess maybe we'll see what happens by the time we get to 2035. We'll see what remains at that point. But like, I'm sure mini-series series will still be a thing, no matter what platform we can put them on. I think there's more to explore here. And that's all I'll say about that. Maybe even, I wouldn't even say, we could possibly do a mini series that is just branched off of this, because again, it's like, I think we really just need to add things. I think there are things that could have been better about the cinematography and everything, but whatever, that's fine. The story is still the story. I think that if we, maybe in a couple years, maybe in 10 years when we can incorporate more stuff from the Wizard of Oz movies, I think we can just add some stuff in. We can just fill shit out. We can have scenes that aren't even necessarily about Elphaba and Glinda. We can have more just like world building stuff just in that universe. The possibilities are endless. All right, but anyway, let's move into our main event of the night. Miss Sabrina Carpenter. This is a cute little puppy, too. Is that her dog, or is that just a random dog? I don't know, but it's cute. All right, so first of all, she did perform at the 2025 Grammys. She also won Best Pop Solo Performance for Espresso and Best Pop Vocal Album for Short and Sweet. She then released the song Man-Child on June 2nd. And this is what I also find very interesting, because there was a moment before she announced Man-Child where I thought Sabrina's somewhat quiet this year. She had been on tour. She was continuing her tour, so there was that. But I was like, I don't know if Sabrina even really will be a contender for, like, the pop girly of 2025. Because she's mostly just continuing to do promo for her last album and doesn't seem to be advancing her career in that way. Not like she was plateaued, but just like it didn't seem like 2025 was going to be a super active year for her. And then June, she announced Man-Child, and it's like since then, it's just kind of been the year of Sabrina Carpenter. So she started teasing it on June 2nd, released it on June 5th, with the video released on June 6th. Now, we can't really obviously watch a whole lot of the video because it's a video and I'll get copyright claimed. But I do still just want to show like a little bit of it because I'm genuinely pissed off for one thing that this didn't win. Why is this taking so long to load? I'm pissed off that this didn't win Video of the Year at the VMAs. I think that's fucking insane. It is nominated for Best Music Video at the Grammys, so I'm still very hopeful. Why is this not? Come on. I'm hopeful that this will win at the Grammys. But to me, like, this is the video of the year. And what I'm so impressed with about it is the fact that if you haven't seen the video, it's all these like little tiny vignettes, these little tiny stories of Sabrina being out with these men and their man children and blah, blah, blah. She's wearing all these different outfits. 37 outfit changes in the whole video. And it's like some of these scenes, they're like seconds long. And I just know from a filmmaking standpoint, it's like you had to set so much up. You had to set a camera up, you had to do the lighting, you had to get the outfits, get the hair and everything just for a few seconds of footage. And you're only using a few seconds. It's insane. The amount of work that must have gone into this with every new outfit and every new, like, just this little shot of her just in a tub. Like, that's it. They got a tub for that. They got little pigs for that. She did her hair. She got an outfit just to, like, look at these pigs for a second. Oh, there's a puppy again. I don't know a pop girl who's doing anything like this in the year 2025. No one is putting this much effort into their shit like that. Who is doing it like her? Genuinely who? Like, what? They got all those little lambs? For this shot, this is the only time that this occurs in the video, is she like wakes up, points her gun, and there's these lambs in the background. That they did all that. They got all those lambs into place like that for that shot. And then it's over. Who is doing it like that? Like, I'm sorry. I hate to, like, shit talk another pop girly here, but it's like Taylor Swift did a whole fucking theatrical release for her listening party for that album. And the lyric videos are just normal ass lyric videos. She didn't do anything extra for it. It's like footage from photo shoots and footage from her other music video shoots, and then they just put this like kaleidoscope effect over it, and then they just put the lyrics on screen. And then that's it. No effort was put into that whatsoever, and it's a thing that got released in theaters, and I still think that's fine, because I think ultimately the theater experience is more about building community and being there with like other fans and listening to the album with other fans. So I don't think that the theater experience was like pointless just because there wasn't that much effort put into it. But I do think that at a certain level, when you're a billionaire and you are like the biggest pop star of the decade, maybe you should put a little bit more effort into it. Maybe it should, maybe at least like just do some lip syncing videos or something. Just film yourself singing along to the songs instead of just having your people on your team just take little shots of you from photo shoots and be like, here, just put some weird effects on it and then put the lyrics up. Like, it is just lazy. But Sabrina, for a fucking music video she's not really, I mean, she's getting money from it in terms of, number one, I'm sure someone at the label is collecting the AdSense from the channel. I don't think it's really her, but someone is collecting AdSense money. And then also, it's promoting the song, so it helps the song chart better. But for the most part, music videos don't really help you that much financially. It's not, especially when MTV isn't really a thing anymore. It's just kind of like an extra bonus thing that you do for your fans at this point. And she is putting so much work into this. Just for the love of the game, I guess. Incredible. Incredible. Oh my god, and lit a guy's hair on fire. So good. But then, of course, going in order of things that happened, Man's Best Friend was announced on June 11th, alongside this album cover. Now, I have a lot to say because obviously this album cover has sparked quite a lot of controversy, quite a lot of discourse, a lot of discussion. And when I started making my notes for it, I just realized that I had a lot to say. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different here. normally I just kind of make notes and I just sort of put things in my notes of like, oh, we'll talk about this, we'll do this, but it's not like super strict, like I want to say this thing, I want to say that thing. They're just points, they're like bullet points. For this, I had so much to say, and I wanted to make sure that I said it all somewhat concisely and somewhat clearly, and I wanted to make sure that I could articulate all my feelings. So I have essentially written a script that I will be reading from, just straight from my little notes app. I'm gonna move it over here towards where you guys kind of are, but I'm not gonna be watching the chat super closely because I'm just going to be reading from my script. So behave yourselves. I am going to kind of be keeping an eye on the chat, but also you guys are really mostly just going to be talking amongst yourselves. This is essentially like, this is a video essay that you're just watching me perform live. So that's what's going to happen throughout most of the rest of this stream. I'm gonna go back to just talking casually after a while, but I've got about an hour and a half worth of a scripted monologue. So that's what we'll be doing. So this is the front cover. This is the back cover. It is very, dog-themed-ish. Submissive-themed-ish. It is also one thing to know about this controversy, before we really get into my big monologue about it. One thing to understand is that it's not just about this video. There's already like some pre-existing stuff with the way that people have been talking about Sabrina Carpenter. Something that was sort of really getting drummed up last year around this time. This is a tweet from, this is really just like a random pop troll stan account. This person is definitely not being serious. I for sure don't think that this person is 17 years old, because I remember I looked into this person's account and I was like, oh, they are just trolling. They're rage baiting. But they did say the iconic words, "I'm 17 and afraid of Sabrina Carpenter," because there's just already been a lot of discourse around the way that Sabrina expresses her sexuality, that a lot of this is playing off of. And the album cover was just sort of I wouldn't say the final straw for people, but it was like the thing that people could just attach a lot of their criticisms of her to. And so that is sort of, we're going to talk about the album cover, but we're also just talking about the career of Sabrina Carpenter over the last 2 years and how people have been discussing it. So I also do want to shout out some of my friends who have made videos about this whole controversy. There are a lot of good videos out there from a lot of different creators. These 3 are my friends though, so I did want to just shout them out personally because, favoritism. But Little Shop of Allie has done, I think, Allie, if you're still in the chat, I think you did like 2 videos on Sabrina, right? You did this one, and then also there was another one that I want to say was even longer. I don't remember. But they're both very good. And then Okie Dokie has done a video about it, and also Trash Discourse. So if you want to watch any other videos about Sabrina, there they are. There's some right there. But I didn't weigh in at the time because I knew that I knew that at some point we were going to do the Pop Girly stream and we were going to talk about Sabrina. So I was like, well, I'll just wait until then. And then I thought for a minute, I was like, well, now that the discourse is past, I probably don't have as much to say. Yes, about her and purity culture. Yep, you're right. But this one, I think, the purity culture stuff definitely does come into play in what I have to say a little bit too. But for sure, this stuff about pop feminism that Allie is talking about really hits on some of my biggest things about the way that people are talking about this album in the first place. But we'll get into it because I'm going to talk about it. But for a minute I was like, okay, well, the controversy's past. I can just kind of overview it, you know? I don't really have to go into depth. But then I started writing it out. I was like, no, I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say. So this is basically my video essay that we're just doing live now. So I've kind of broken it up here into like the big things that people are talking about, the points of discourse that a lot of this is rooted around. So one of the first things that people are upset about, and that's really what this like I'm 17 and afraid of Sabrina Carpenter thing is trying to build off of, is this idea that Sabrina Carpenter and her display of her own sexuality is inappropriate because there are children watching. There are children at her concerts. Now, I'm sure that there are children at Sabrina Carpenter's concerts, but I have always felt like her audience, especially recently, especially like in these last 2 years, because this is one of the things about Sabrina too, is that she did start on the Disney Channel. She was a Disney Channel girl. She was signed to Hollywood Records, which we'll talk about. So she was a Disney Channel girly, and that was what a lot of her early career was, is just like Hollywood Records approved material that was a little bit more childish. And so at some point there definitely were a lot of children in her audience. But then I think those children probably grew up as she did, because she has been making music for over 10 years. So the kids that were in her audience before are now adults. And so I was like, I definitely think that Sabrina Carpenter's audience is not that young. And I was trying to find evidence of this. It's not like there are really clear demographics that come out of different pop girlies audiences. But I was like, but if you just look at who's showing up to her concerts, I think you can probably tell a lot about who is listening to Sabrina Carpenter. So this is an image from her Primavera Sound performance in Barcelona earlier this year. Those all look like adults to me. I don't see anyone in that audience that I think looks like a kid. And now, to be fair, this is a festival performance, so people who buy tickets to go to the festival, maybe not necessarily the same people who are buying tickets to go to her other tour shows that are just her, because you're buying a festival ticket, you're going to see multiple other people, not just Sabrina Carpenter. And maybe also, I don't know enough about the Primavera Sound Festival, maybe they only let in people who are over 18, I'm not quite sure. So to be fair about that, it's like, okay, maybe that's not totally the same audience. Now, it's hard to find video footage of her audience from her actual shows, her non-festival dates, because all the filmed stuff is like the festival dates. She doesn't have any sort of professionally filmed footage from her other tour stops. The only thing you can really find is like people in the audience taking videos. And people in the audience are taking videos of Sabrina. They're not like turning the camera to be like, and here's all the people next to me. Here's how old they all look. But during her shows, she does this thing where she arrests some sort of public figure in the audience. And when she does that, that person stands like in front of the barricade. And then they are shown on the big screens at the show where you can see them getting arrested. And then you see the audience behind them. So we do have some footage of that from the arrests where we can see Sabrina's audience. So this is when she arrested Domingo, that character who's on SNL. Behind him, it does, I mean, they look young-ish, but they still look like young college-age girls to me, like 18 to 24-ish. There's Gigi Hadid right there, where, again, these look like adults to me, maybe even a little bit older, maybe like early 20s-ish. Some of them look kind of young, but not like high school or middle school age to me. This is Emma Bunton. Again, look like college-age kids to me. This is what is his name? Joe Carey, the guy from Stranger Things. No offense to this man back here. This does not look like a young man's shirt to me. I don't know any teenage boy who wears shirts like that. So I don't know. This is Millie Bobby Brown. Look like adults to me. That guy's got a full fucking mustache. Full fucking mustache. That's not a kid. Jack Antonoff. Those all look like adults. Fanning sisters. Whole bunch of adults. SZA. Looking radiant as ever. With adults behind her. And the most recent one, Miss Piggy from her last concert. And what do we see behind Miss Piggy? Yet again, adults. So, like, Sabrina Carpenter's primary audience appears to be made up of young adults. Are there children in her audience as well? Of course. Every mainstream musical artist has children in their audience somewhere. But it is incredibly misogynistic and patriarchal to expect a woman to adapt her artistic expressions based on the mere presence of some children within a space where children were never the intended spectators. This attitude reinforces the idea that preserving the purity and innocence of children is more important than an adult woman's autonomy, especially since the implied duty to protect the innocence of children is one that is put onto female artists almost exclusively, as if every woman who dares exist in the public sphere is automatically a maternal figure for a bunch of strangers' kids just by nature of her gender. Sabrina Carpenter is, of course, not the first woman to be given the title of role model without her consent. This is something that many women in the spotlight have had to deal with before her, especially pop icon Britney Spears, as seen in this now heavily maligned Diane Sawyer interview from 2003. So let's watch that.
With Madonna as her model, Britney Spears has upset a lot of mothers in this country, starting with the wife of the governor of Maryland, who appeared at an anti-violence rally, and well, listen to what she said.
Really, if I had an opportunity to shoot Britney Spears, I think I would.
Oh, that's horrible.
Well,
that's really bad.
because of the example for kids and how hard it is to be a parent and keep all of this away from your kids.
Well, that's really sad that she said that. Ew. You know what? Like, I'm not here to, babysit her kids.
Later, the governor's wife had to retract her statement because of a public outcry about her reference to guns. But it is true that kids made Britney Spears, and then she remade them in her image.
We love Britney! Oh, baby, baby, how was I supposed to know?
And then, in the past 2 years, that image has taken a highly explicit turn as she searched for a new edge. We wondered, does she care what her old fans, those kids, think, for instance, about this?
How could it hurt you when it looks so good?
I mean, I know those two ladies don't really give a damn what I say, but I think it's irresponsible in a way.
Bette Midler, who used to push a few envelopes herself.
It's kind of tacky in a way, because to say that I'm not responsible for the fact that there's, 10, 11-year-olds watching this show.
I mean, I can't help that. And if the parents don't like them to see it, then change the channel. So, sorry, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes every day, honey. I know, but I want to be a good person for me, but I think it's a huge pressure to think that you have to take the responsibility to be this role model.
It's one thing not to want to be the role model anymore. It's another thing not to know that a lot of young girls are looking at this. A lot of them.
But am I responsible for them?
So to anyone who is currently going onto social media to chastise Sabrina Carpenter for daring to express her sexuality at her own concerts, just because some parents have made the decision to take their kids to see a performer who has never once hidden their sexuality in their adult career, just know that you are Diane Sawyer in this instance. And if you consider yourself a feminist, that's not a person you really want to be. Now, some would argue that not only is Sabrina displaying her sexuality to an audience of children, she is also sexualizing an image of childhood itself. There are many examples critics will give of this sexualization. However, a main point of concern revolves around a 2024 photo shoot for W magazine, in which one image drew comparisons to a shot from the 1997 film adaptation of the novel Lolita. Let it first be noted that this was not a photo shoot for Sabrina's album, but for a suburbia-themed magazine spread where Sabrina and her team's creative control over the shoot would have been minimal. In this instance, Sabrina merely agreed to a set of photos proposed to her by a photographer working for the magazine. She did not come up with the concepts for the photos herself, and most likely did not have final say over which photos made it to print. In any case, after a TikTok connecting the photo shoot to a still from Lolita went viral, Sabrina commented on the video directly, writing, "I've never seen this movie, it's never been on my mood board, and never would be." This statement provides a clear denial of any inspiration taken from the film by Sabrina, while also indicating a firm opposition from Sabrina to ever make such an allusion intentionally. It has been made explicitly clear then that Sabrina Carpenter isn't interested in participating in a Lolita-esque fantasy. However, plenty of commenters have cast doubt onto the validity of her statement by declaring that the allusion to Lolita is too blatant to be denied. On the Faux Moi subreddit, aka Internalized Misogyny Central, the top comment on a post claiming that Sabrina has never seen the 1997 film writes, "Well, her team definitely has." Many comments on the post accuse Sabrina of outright lying, going so far as to claim that if she did in fact not recognize the image as a reference, she should be considered culturally illiterate, as these commenters are apparently under the impression that the 1997 adaptation of Lolita was ever a culturally significant film in the first place. It wasn't. Almost a year after its premiere in Italy, Lolita 1997 received an exceptionally limited theatrical run in the United States, essentially being shown in just enough theaters to qualify for Oscar nominations it never received. Throughout its entire run in the US and Canada, it made a little over $1 million against a budget of $62 million. Following that pitiful release, the movie was never made available on home video in the United States, and while it is currently streaming on Tubi as of last year and Hulu as of this year, for much of its existence, the 1997 adaptation of Lolita was only available to American audiences via A, the purchase of an international copy of the film, B, the occasional screenings on Showtime from 1998 until 2003, when the premium cable channel held the exclusive rights to all American distribution, or C, good old-fashioned piracy, making the mere access to the adaptation in the US extremely limited until very recently. It was not until the mid-2010s when the literary references of Lana Del Rey encouraged many young fans, especially young girls, to research the history of Lolita the novel, incidentally leading them to discovering the existence of the 1997 film, which then became a frequent aesthetic reference on a few subspaces of one primary social media site. Let's be very clear then. If you can immediately recognize the image of Dominique Swain lying in the grass beside a sprinkler as a still from that film, that is not evidence of you being a culturally literate person. That is evidence that you are a resident of some very specific online spaces in the mid-2010s, because straight up, the 1997 adaptation of Lolita was a gigantic flop that a vast majority of the public has never seen. It is not unlikely that Sabrina Carpenter is included in that vast majority, especially since she has been working regularly in the entertainment industry since 2011, limiting the amount of free time she had to scroll sad girl Tumblr. I bring all this up because I think when you put everything into context, Sabrina's lack of control over a magazine she doesn't work for, the relative obscurity of the film TikTokers and Reddit users insist she must have seen, and the fact that Sabrina probably didn't spend her teenage years as online as the rest of us, the whole Sabrina Carpenter was definitely referencing Lolita thing is definitely a bit of a stretch. As my friend Ofi Doki pointed out during her video on Sabrina, though, supposedly damning claims about women being a bit of a stretch when you zoom in or out is a dominant feature of the misogyny slop ecosystem. In Ofi's words, the key to the MSE is to pretend like the world works in whichever way is most convenient to hate that woman at that moment. I do think that plays a massive part in the backlash here. The Lolita claim is mostly just a small part of a larger pile-on, but to be as charitable as possible to those perpetuating this claim the most, I think plenty of those critics might have just been taking out some retrospective rage they feel toward the 2010s online ubiquity of Lolita as a romanticized image. Honestly, I think even the conversations around that should be more nuanced than some of the most inflamed spaces on the internet really want them to be. But ultimately, women in the public eye, whether they be Sabrina Carpenter, Lana Del Rey, Britney Spears, or whomever else, are mostly just scapegoats for deeper issues that are hard to explore without a clear villain to aim all of one's criticisms at. There are reasons to be concerned about how images of young girls get sexualized by adult media, but Sabrina Carpenter is not your enemy. She is also just a girl trying to navigate the same fucked up world as the rest of us. Now, are there elements within Sabrina's work that are helping fuel this controversy? Yes. For one thing, there's her 2024 track Juno, where Sabrina communicates a desire to be impregnated through a reference to the 2007 film of the same name, a movie about an unplanned teenage pregnancy. While I agree that the Juno reference is uncomfortable, given the age of Juno in the film, it's clear that Sabrina is only using the movie's title as a reference to pregnancy in general, since pregnancy is the only relevance the film's story has to the song's lyrics. In the movie, Juno, the character, is a teenager who gets pregnant by accident after a one-night stand with a friend she's not in a romantic relationship with. She responds to that event by carrying the fetus to term, then gives the baby up for adoption rather than keeping it herself. Sorry, spoilers. The lyrics of Sabrina's Juno, however, center around its narrator's attraction to the song's love interest, along with her desire to lock down the relationship and make it into something permanent. The narrator of the song is in a growingly committed partnership. She is contemplating making a deliberate attempt to get pregnant, and she does not express any desire to give the results of said pregnancy up for adoption. Given all the ways Sabrina's Juno diverges from the basic story of the film, it can be reasonably assumed that the narrator of the song is not a teenage girl. It is okay to still be weirded out by Sabrina's decision to make that reference. You can find the lyrics tacky, inappropriate, or just straight up gross. But that doesn't mean Sabrina was ever personally interested in sexualizing a teenager. And also, that song is just a fucking bop regardless of what she's saying on it. Okay, I don't know what's happening in the chat right now. Let me see. Okay, I don't know what's happening in here, but let's not complain about other people in my chat, please. I'll let that go for now. Some critics will argue, though, that Sabrina sexualizes adolescence beyond that one song by claiming that her onstage persona combines self-infantilization with self-sexualization. And while I don't think these accusations would be nearly as prominent if Sabrina weren't a 5-foot woman with small tits, it is true that some elements of Sabrina's work can be considered childlike. A segment in her Short and Sweet tour, for instance, features a modified version of Spin the Bottle, a classic slumber party game in which typically teenage participants sit in a circle on the floor and spin a bottle to decide which of the other teenagers they should kiss. Sabrina employs this game in her shows as a cheeky way of deciding what her surprise song for that set will be. Supposedly. There is some debate about whether or not her spinning the bottle actually, is, like, doing anything. She might just be picking the songs in the first place and then just using the spin the bottle thing to make it seem like it's more impromptu. But regardless, the spin the bottle motif is there. During a recent SNL performance, she can also be seen dancing to her song Man-Child in nothing but underwear and a t-shirt in a set made to resemble a young girl or woman's bedroom, complete with a microphone made to look like a round hairbrush, which is also, like, genius, by the way. She has kept that round hairbrush around for her tours. I think that's incredible. I think that is, like, one of the smartest things she has ever done. It's reminiscent of the opening of the 2002 film Crossroads, in which Britney Spears delivers a brilliant performance portraying a teenage girl graduating high school, but it's more likely a direct reference to the 2000 film adaptation of Charlie's Angels, where an adult Cameron Diaz dances in her room wearing nothing but a t-shirt and Spider-Man undies. The scenes in Crossroads and Charlie's Angels are incredibly similar. Firstly, because Britney was inspired by Charlie's Angels during the conception of the Crossroads opening, but also because the age of the characters doesn't really change the significance of the scenes. The female person dancing in her underwear in her bedroom can be a teenage girl or an adult woman because the joyous expressions of girlhood do not have to leave you once you reach a certain age. In the words of pop queen Addison Rae, the girl I used to be is still the girl inside of me. And the girls many of us adult women used to be were sexual beings not dissimilar to us. While there were a lot of problematic things that came from the 2010s Tumblr Lolita craze, Lana Del Rey didn't make a whole generation of young girls identify with Dolores Hayes out of nowhere. There is a reason that story resonated with Lana and with her audience at that time. Even girls who don't specifically relate to the abuse Dolores faced can still relate to the experience of being a young girl with sexual desires some adults will gladly take advantage of, while the rest of society tries to convince them to find shame in it. Movies, TV shows, social media, pop music, etc. doesn't give teenage girls their sexuality. Rather, many young girls are drawn to certain forms of sexualized media because that media provides them a safe space to explore their sexualities within communities that aren't constantly admonishing them for their desires. Yeah, I know it's a fan poster, but that's fine. I'm just using that as a representation of the Lolita image that was going around on Tumblr. There is a difference between inappropriately sexualizing adolescents in a predatory fashion and holding a healthy amount of reverence for the experiences one had and the person one once was when their sexual desires first began to develop. For many of us, those desires started in adolescence. And the frustrating thing about that is, that's something that's well understood and tolerated for male expressions of sexuality. The strict distinctions between adolescent sexuality and adult sexuality is something that only seems to exist and be so harshly policed when it's a woman expressing herself in a way that feels reminiscent of girlhood rather than a man expressing himself in a way that honors his boyhood. For example, in 2019, a 28-year-old Charlie Puth released a song called Mother with lyrics written from the perspective of a teenage boy engaging in sexual activities with another teenager, as Charlie sings on the chorus, "If your mother knew all the things that we do, she'd keep me so far from you." If the lyrics weren't blatant enough, Charlie then tweeted the statement, "Mother is about the high school experience that I never had." Charlie Puth is sexualizing a teenage version of himself, but that song never sparked any real controversy because teenage boys are allowed to be sexual in ways that teenage girls are not, giving adult men permission to celebrate the adolescent origins of their sexual desires in ways that adult women would be crucified for. Similarly, the Transformers film franchise, primarily directed by Michael Bay from 2007 to 2017, is so stuffed with sex that one of the movies contains a scene in which an adult character explains Romeo and Juliet laws to establish why it's legal for him to fuck a minor. Now, that scene received a fair amount of backlash for obvious reasons. But prior to that, no one really bat an eye at the fact that there was already an absurd amount of sexuality present in a series of films that was based on a children's toy, since the target demographic for the toy and the movies was boys and men rather than girls and women. The fact that the Transformers IP is able to exist in the worlds of both boys and men without scandal is itself a testament to how men are not expected to shed the interests and aesthetics of boyhood as they become adults. There is no hairstyle that a man can have that will get him accused of pandering to pedophiles. However, once a woman crosses some invisible line between girlhood and womanhood, we are expected to never pair a revealing outfit with certain variations of pigtails due to that hairstyle's association with feminine childhood, for which there is no male equivalent. In addition to the controversy surrounding the Man's Best Friend album cover, one version of the actual vinyl has come under scrutiny as well for depicting a man at the foot of Sabrina's bed in a way that some have interpreted to be Lolita-esque. The main reason for this is that the shading makes the man's hair look slightly gray, but let's notice as well that the same shading exists on his clearly black suit. I don't think the age of the man in the image can be so easily determined based on any shades of gray, but let's assume for a moment that this is an older man with graying hair. Considering the woman on the bed is clearly Sabrina Carpenter, exactly what about this image evokes Lolita when Sabrina is a 26-year-old adult woman? Is it the bright color of her top? The lack of gray in her hair? The loose, ruffled nature of her socks? How does Sabrina need to present herself to earn the right to express attraction to other adults? Moving on, we have the accusation that Sabrina's work is romanticizing and or glamorizing women's self-degradation. It's certainly relevant and not totally unwarranted in the conversations about the album cover, but it is something that Sabrina's been accused of even prior to that. Yet again, much of this discourse feels like a holdover from that surrounding Lana Del Rey's career from the early to mid-2010s. Now, Lana's work often did present romanticized depictions of gendered violence, and though I think that work has a great deal of artistic merit and does not need to present itself as morally righteous or progressive to be of value, the influence Lana had over young girls, myself included, was a little troubling at times, given the amount that she did in some ways glamorize the abuse of women as a sort of aesthetic. This is what makes the hand-wringing over Sabrina Carpenter's pop persona, however, feel not just odd and overblown by comparison, but distinctly more focused on policing young women's sexuality as a whole, rather than displaying any concern over how any specific sexual dynamics are being potentially normalized by her output. Sabrina is not glamorizing the abuse of women in her work. In fact, as a visual artist, she's often been noted for her gleeful depictions of violence against men, as she frequently kills off male characters in her music videos. The deaths of men are framed in Sabrina's work either as cause for celebration or mere indifference, not because Sabrina thinks violence against men is okay in real life, but because her work offers a cathartic space for young women forced to exist in a world in which they are expected to prioritize male desire and excuse misogynistic behavior by creating a cinematic universe in which men are mostly disposable and abusive men in particular are punished for their wrongdoings. In Sabrina Carpenter's world, men are side characters who come and go, and women are subjects with agency whose stories prevail long after their romantic interests have perished. To that point, when sexuality is portrayed within the Sabrina-verse, it is Sabrina's desires that are at the forefront. Sex to Sabrina is fun, and that is readily apparent from her output. When she sings Juno live, for instance, she takes advantage of a line about sexual positions to surprise fans with a new Juno position every night. This practice has caused controversy on its own, with the typical pearl clutching about children being in the audience, alongside accusations of Sabrina needing to use sex to sell herself, as if all the young, mostly hetero women in the audience bought a ticket specifically to see a woman ironically acting out a not necessarily sexual position fully clothed for about 3 seconds. But one position in particular became a strange point of contention when Sabrina debuted the Eiffel Tower during a show in Paris in March of this year. Never mind the fact that the Eiffel Tower was clearly chosen as a nod to the city she was performing in, some supposed feminists jumped on the opportunity to use this specific position as a way to chastise Sabrina for not expressing her sexuality the right way. In a since-deleted post, one Twitter user wrote, "That position in particular is inherently degrading. The whole point of it is a woman being used for men's pleasure. There's no way to look at this as a positive thing, and it's certainly not intimate." This is an obviously regressive way of thinking, as it upholds the idea that a woman's sexual desires are inherent to her sex or gender and not her own individual personhood. Plenty of women find an Eiffel Tower position perfectly enjoyable, and not every woman cares about crafting a specifically intimate bond with their sexual partners. As long as everyone involved is a consenting adult, there is nothing inherently wrong or degrading about any position. Perhaps the argument that Sabrina was allowing herself to be used for men's pleasure would be more convincing, though, if she wasn't so clearly delighted by her bit as she performs it. To look at Sabrina Carpenter smiling and laughing as she gets into position and deciding that she's simulating an act of feminine suffering means overriding Sabrina's own opinion about what she feels degraded by. It is a denial of her agency in order to satisfy a narrative created for her by strangers trying to police women's desires. That being said, while the Juno positions are clearly meant to celebrate sex and to some degree kink, is that what the cover of Man's Best Friend is trying to do? Is the album cover an expression of Sabrina Carpenter's desire for sexual submission, maybe more specifically pup play, given the dog references? According to her, no. It is definitely clear that some amount of kink or kink-adjacent imagery was used as inspiration for the photo, even if the inspiration was subconscious, since the main cover shows Sabrina on all fours having her hair gently pulled, while the back cover shows the album's name on a dog's collar. However, the photo and title are actually being employed as a metaphor for indeed, some level of self-degradation. For that, I understand why so many people found the album cover and title so off-putting upon release. I wouldn't call Sabrina's frequent killing of men in her music videos specifically feminist, or if it is, it's a very shallow, girl-bossified version of feminism. But I would again call the fuck men ethos of the Sabrina-verse cathartic for many of its female consumers. In the era of America's second Trump administration, Sabrina's music acts as a much-needed avenue for escapism, something she seems keenly aware of as she specifically addressed the women in her audience the night after the 2024 election, saying, "I hope we can be a moment of peace for you, a moment of safety. I'm sorry about our country." Following that statement and the entirety of her career up to that point, up with an image of herself on her knees, her hair in a man's hand, was definitely jarring for a lot of people who are justifiably sensitive right now about images which even hint toward gendered violence. It is an uncomfortable photo to say the least, but uncomfortable doesn't necessarily mean bad or even anti-feminist. What many people are concerned about, though, is whether or not this image of Sabrina could properly be classified as an example of the male gaze. Now, not to brag, but I did go to college once upon a time, and I did eventually graduate. I was a film studies major with a primary interest in feminist film theory, as well as a philosophy minor with a primary interest in existentialist philosophy. So, given the origins of the concept of the male gaze within existentialism and feminist film theory, one could say I do quite literally have a degree in this. And unsurprisingly, I have found much of the online discourse around it to be a bit reductive. So let's explain what the male gaze is. Firstly, the concept of the gaze, or the look, originates more or less with Jean-Paul Sartre's 1943 book Being and Nothingness, which is a banger. For Sartre, the look is the experience that occurs when one recognizes themselves as a perceivable object in someone else's consciousness, rather than just a consciousness experiencing life from the inside out. It is quite literally just the feeling of being looked at and how that affects your behavior. The gaze then became an important feature of media studies, particularly in reference to gender and the effect the male gaze has on women, in 1972 with John Berger's BBC series Ways of Seeing. Now, after that, there is, of course, Laura Mulvey, who arguably popularized the term the male gaze in her 1975 essay, Visual Pleasure in Narrative Cinema. But I'm gonna be honest, it's not my favorite essay. It's been a minute since I've read it, so maybe my memory is a bit unclear, but from what I remember, it heavily relies on ideas of phallocentrism and also Freudian and Lacanian psychology, which I'm not too keen on. And I quite honestly don't find it that useful in a lot of discussions on the male gaze, particularly this one, since we are discussing a still photo rather than a film. And John Berger's explanation of the concept will work just fine. I did want to acknowledge at least the work of Laura Mulvey, since she is the person popularly associated with the term, and also because it felt weird to talk about the work of two men rather than the woman who popularized the concept, but if I'm being honest, I prefer the work of those two men. Turns out, I'm not a misandrist after all. So, to give myself a break from talking, I have edited parts of Ways of Seeing down to a short video so that Mr. Berger can explain the concept of the male gaze himself. Just as a warning, there is some painted nudity in this video, but this is educational, so YouTube cannot get mad at me about that.
Women constantly meet glances which act like mirrors, reminding them of how they look or how they should look. Behind every glance is a judgment. Sometimes the glance they meet is their own, reflected back from a real mirror. A woman is always accompanied, except when quite alone, perhaps even then, by her own image of herself. While she is walking across a room or weeping at the death of her father, she cannot avoid envisaging herself walking or weeping. From earliest childhood, she is taught and persuaded to survey herself continually. She has to survey everything she is and everything she does, because how she appears to others, and particularly how she appears to men, is of crucial importance for what is normally thought of as the success of her life. A woman in the culture of privileged Europeans is first and foremost a sight to be looked at. What kind of sight is revealed in the average European oil painting? There were portraits of women as there were portraits of men. But in one category of painting, women were the principal, ever-recurring subject. That category was the nude. In the nudes of European painting, we can discover some of the criteria and conventions by which women were judged. We can see how women were seen. I don't want to deny the crucial part that seeing plays in sexuality, but there's a great difference between being seen as oneself naked or seeing another in that way and a body being put on display. Most nudes in oil paintings have been lined up by their painters for the pleasure of the male spectator owner, who will assess and judge them as sights. Their nudity is another form of dress. They are condemned to never being naked. With their clothes off, they are as formal as with their clothes on. Those who are not judged beautiful are not beautiful. Those who are given the prize. The prize is to be owned, that is to say, to be available. Charles II commissioned this secret painting from Lely. It's like hundreds of others. It might be Venus and Cupid. But in fact, it was a portrait of one of his mistresses, Nell Gwynn. It shows her passively looking at the spectator, staring at her naked. The painting, when he shows it to others, demonstrates this submission. His guests envy him. By contrast, in another tradition, nakedness is a celebration of active sexual love as between two people. The woman as active as the man. The actions of each absorb the other. In oil painting, the second person, or the second person who matters, is the stranger looking at the picture. Compare the expression of these two women. One the model for what is considered a masterpiece by Ingres, and the other an ill-paid model for a photograph in a girly magazine. Or these two. Just the expression, the look. What do you see? It seems to me that in each pair the expression is remarkably similar, and that it is an expression of responding with calculated charm to the man whom she knows is looking at her, although she doesn't know him. It is true that sometimes a painting includes a male lover, but the woman's attention is very rarely directed towards him. She looks away from him, or she looks out of the picture towards he who considers himself her true lover, the spectator owner.
So, is Man's Best Friend, the album cover, an example of Sabrina pandering to the male gaze? Well, first of all, let's acknowledge that women's internalization of the male gaze is an important aspect of the concept, so any argument of, well, it's her album cover, she's in control of the photo shoot, she's in control of her art, thus it can't be the male gaze, is an argument that I just don't really think holds up. The image on its own certainly does feature elements of traditional male gaze artwork. Sabrina isn't nude, as John Berger was discussing in the clips we watched, but she is obviously sexualized, and sexualized in a way that does conform with white patriarchal beauty standards. She is also absolutely in a submissive position. Her emotions are kind of hard to discern given the almost vacant facial expression she's making as she looks toward the camera, and there's a man in the photo as well, but he's clearly anonymous. His identity doesn't matter, which one could argue makes him the true subject of the art if he can be interpreted as a sort of you character. Perhaps a man who would like to have a woman in a submissive position such as this could see himself represented by the faceless male body, but the fact that Sabrina is looking at the camera rather than the man complicates that reading. Like the examples Berger gave, the spectator is the real subject of the image. This is a scene shown in second person, where the perspective of the viewer determines the ultimate meaning, so to say whether or not this is an example of male gaze, we have to decide who the viewer is. Is it a photo meant to appeal to the desires of a presumably masculine audience like all of those paintings? I'm not sure. I think the fact that this isn't an image meant to exist as its own isolated piece of art, but an album cover meant to advertise a larger body of work being released by an artist with a pre-established fan base, makes it kind of hard to say that this was created for an anonymous male spectator, because that's just not who Sabrina Carpenter makes music for. No matter what you think about her use of childlike aesthetics, the appropriateness of her references, her overall sexual expressions, I just don't think it's reasonable to deny the fact that Sabrina Carpenter is for the girls. Most of the rooms these vinyls will be put on display within are not the rooms of heterosexual men, because they're clearly not the audience for Sabrina's actual music. This does greatly affect the way that I interpret this photo. As a spectator, I feel like I've walked in on Sabrina doing something kind of humiliating, and I don't take pleasure in her humiliation, I relate to it, or at least I understand how other women could. Sabrina in this photo is not identityless. She literally has a ring on her middle finger with her initials on it, but she's on her knees for a random faceless man and looking to the camera with a facial expression that, if it communicates anything concrete, it's maybe an awareness of getting caught in a compromised position. Sabrina knows she looks kind of pathetic, and that's maybe the point. I wasn't eager to jump into this discourse when it first erupted back in June on the simple basis that the album cover exists in the context of the album, and I hadn't heard the album yet. No one had. We didn't even have a track list at that time. Now that the record's out, I honestly think the cover makes complete sense and communicates what I always kind of expected it was meant to. Man's Best Friend, sonically and lyrically, feels like an unofficial sister album of her last record, Short and Sweet, the title for which was explained as being a tribute to Sabrina's dating history and how her shortest relationships have had the most impact on her. Short and Sweet is about the highs and lows of a mildly toxic heterosexual dating life. Man's Best Friend is that as well, but with a more focused and refined format. I would argue that this is actually a concept album, perhaps even a pop opera telling the story of a woman who knows she has a pattern of dating men that aren't good for her, yet can't stop herself from falling into a new self-destructive situationship the second that a new man-child shows a hint of potential. The fact that the album opens with Man-Child, both in its official track list and the singles rollout, feels intentional in how it sets the mood for the project. Throughout the song, Sabrina talks about a type of immature man she somehow keeps falling for, then declares on the bridge, "And I swear they choose me, I'm not choosing them," before following up an amen to signify a closure of this prayer with an excited "Hey men," indicating that she's already approaching a new set of guys who will inevitably disappoint her. As much as people wanted Sabrina's comeback to contain a more specific diss against her most recent ex, the actor Barry Keoghan, who starred in her Please 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 video from the previous album, the track is more generally about Sabrina and her overall dating history. Coincidentally, the same could be said about Please, 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 even if it contains a few more specific references to Barry, as Sabrina openly begs her new love interest to please, please, please not embarrass her publicly by outing himself as a loser. Given the very prevalent cheating rumors following Sabrina and Barry's split last year, it appears that he failed to defeat whatever curse is commanding Sabrina's love life. Rather than showing her struggle against a bad boy in one relationship, however, the video for Man-Child contains a series of seconds-long vignettes where countless men put her into new precarious situations. Given how inconsequential each individual man winds up being, though, is it actually the men placing Sabrina into these narratives? Or is the real problem the fact that she keeps giving her time and attention to man-children who never deserved it? The next track and next single, Tears, hints toward the latter. On the surface, Tears is a more positive and optimistic song about a new lover than tracks like Man-Child or Please, 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 but it has a sneakily sinister undertone, especially when put into the context of the song it follows and the ones that it precedes in the album's track list. The lyrics show Sabrina expressing overwhelming attraction toward a man doing the bare minimum as she sings on the chorus, treating me like you're supposed to do, tears run down my thighs. The key to the song is in the yearning it conveys rather than the satisfaction. Sabrina doesn't get wet at the sight of her lover being a responsible guy, something that would already indicate exceptionally low standards. Instead, she gets wet at the thought of him acting responsibly. In the verses, she practically begs her new boyfriend to act like the man she wants him to be, pleading in the first verse, "Baby, just do the dishes, I'll give you what you want," before apparently having to inform her partner that a little communication is important in the lead up for sex. In the second verse, she seems to be giving either her man or just heterosexual men in general a helpful hint for courting a mate, advising, "A little respect for women can get you very, very far." Clearly, the bar is in hell, and hell is where Sabrina remains, as the next 5 tracks on the album describe the dissolution of either one or several relationships, including a song that opens with the lyrics, "Bullshit repeats itself, is that how the saying goes? Been here 1,000 times, selective memory though." To drive this point home, Sabrina follows this up with a string of songs. To drive this point home, Sabrina follows up this string of songs with the track "When Did You Get Hot?" Here, our perpetually unsatisfied narrator expresses a sudden and surprising lust toward a man she used to not find attractive. Read in the context of the album, it's very possible that this man looks exactly the same as he once did, and Sabrina's newfound attraction to him is purely the result of her standards plummeting to lower depths than before, now that she's had her heart broken a few more times. The more surface-level reading of the song, though, the one that casts Sabrina as a more reliable narrator, correctly assessing this man's current and previous hotness, still doesn't make her look any less desperate, as the lyrics are still fixated on the supposed changes this man has made. She isn't attracted to him as a person necessarily. She simply finds allure in his ability to improve, making her doomed to date even more fixer-uppers. All of this makes the intention of the album title and cover feel explicitly clear to me. Man's Best Friend is about how pathetic and embarrassing falling for a new random man can make a woman feel. But the focus Sabrina's recent work has put onto heterosexual entanglements offers many of her critics some other problematic talking points, specifically the claim that Sabrina is a male-centered woman. The conversations around the glamorization of violence against women and the possible male gaze perspective of the album cover can be plenty nuanced. Even arguments I ultimately disagree with tend to make some valid points. But the male-centered allegations against Sabrina is where I really start to lose patience with this discourse. Now, I hate to be too inflammatory here, and I hope that those of you that this applies to, and whom I do still believe are good eggs deep down, take this as a statement of tough love, because I'm going to be very, very blunt in informing you what you sound like to me when you say that Sabrina Carpenter is a male-centered artist. You low-key sound like Max Landis and his theory of Jepsonology. Now, like with Max and his work, or like Max with the work of Carly Rae Jepsen, a lot of you have taken Sabrina Carpenter's body of work, the entirety of her discography, and analyzed it through a lens that is so grossly oversimplified and uncharitable that it just feels like straight up misogyny. Now, I'll give you that Max seemed to enjoy the idea that Carly Rae was only ever writing about men, which presents a very particular kind of ickiness, especially given his personal history. But the fact that a bunch of you are trying to use your perception of Sabrina's music and the focus you've decided she's given male attention as a point against her doesn't make your analysis anywhere near as woke as you think it does. Now, maybe a lot of people don't realize this because she's only been a main pop girly for a few years. But Man's Best Friend is not Sabrina Carpenter's second or even third album. It's her 7th. She has been releasing music regularly and at a professional level for over a decade. And if you think that she's just been writing about boys for that entire time, you are simply wrong. Now, it is true that since the release of her 2022 album, with tracks like Nonsense and Feather helping to propel her into main pop girly conversations, pretty much all of Sabrina's songs have involved men to some degree. Though I will point out that the title track for Emails I Can't Send is a story told from the perspective of a daughter talking to a father rather than a woman talking to her lover. If the focus on men in Sabrina's work is a turnoff to you, that's fine as a personal preference. You can find the running themes of her songs tiring or just not relatable enough to hold your attention. But saying, I don't like Sabrina's music because I don't care about her straight girl problems is a lot different from saying Sabrina Carpenter is anti-feminist because all she writes about is men. It's not merely an incorrect accusation due to the counterexamples in her pre-Emails I Can't Send career. Even with men existing in the context of every song on Emails, Short and Sweet, and Man's Best Friend, quite a lot of those songs aren't really about men either. They're about Sabrina. Take, for instance, her first big hit, Espresso. The chorus goes, "Now he's thinking about me every night, oh, is it that sweet? I guess so. Say you can't sleep, baby, I know, that's that me espresso." Are those lyrics about a boy? Not really. There is a mysterious he present in the story the song is telling, but he doesn't really matter. He is just one of many, which Sabrina acknowledges in the very first verse, singing, "I got this one boy and he won't stop calling. When they act this way, I know I got him." Clearly, this is a song about how sweet Sabrina's pussy tastes and how it's been known to keep men up at night. Like, genuinely, what part of "that's that me espresso" did everybody not understand? Then, of course, there's the song Taste off Short and Sweet. This is one of the few in Sabrina's most recent 2 albums that seems to be addressing a very specific entanglement she once found herself in, that being the apparent love triangle of her, Camila Cabello, and Shawn Mendes, when Sabrina allegedly had a fling with Shawn between one of his and Camila's brief breakups. The song is not really about Shawn Mendes, though. The you Sabrina is referring to when she says, I heard you're back together, and if that's true, you'll just have to taste me when he's kissing you, is obviously Camila. This is therefore a song about another woman where a man just happens to be the catalyst for their third-party psychosexual love affair. To be fair, you could still interpret Sabrina's infatuation with that woman in the song as being a product of her jealousy from losing her boyfriend, but some other efforts to make one of Sabrina's songs about an ex of hers have required far larger reaches to satisfy that narrative. For example, the Man's Best Friend track Go-Go Juice, where Sabrina sings about getting drunk and calling her exes to numb the pain of her loneliness. In a desperate attempt to make one of the songs on this album about her most recent ex-boyfriend, the immediate response from a shockingly large amount of people was to claim that when Sabrina mentions a man whose name rhymes with villain, she must be talking about Barry Keoghan, because Keoghan kind of rhymes with villain. You know, if you, squint your ears? When the absurdity of that started to set in, though, the stand theory changed to the line actually being about Dylan O'Brien, since Dylan does rhyme with villain a lot more clearly than Barry's first or last name. Dylan O'Brien was even asked about this on an episode of Watch What Happens Live, where he expressed some doubt, claiming that Sabrina's never drunk dialed him. Now, could it still be a reference to Dylan? Sure. It could also be a more meta reference to the previous song on the track list, When Did You Get Hot?, since the you of that song is introduced as a presumably fictional character named Devin. The one that rhymes with villain is not the only name in Go-Go Juice, though, that's caused debate. Earlier in the chorus, when Sabrina sings, could be John or Larry, gosh, who's to say? Earlier in the chorus, Sabrina sings, could be John or Larry, gosh, who's to say? If we presume the following line, or the one that rhymes with villain if I'm feeling that way, is actually a clue that all the names in the song are meant to rhyme with that of a man she's dated in real life, perhaps John is Sean, because again, it kind of rhymes. Larry could be Barry, and even the word gosh could be a reference to Joshua Bassett, whom Sabrina infamously dated after he broke up with Olivia Rodrigo when they were all on the Disney Channel. Now, perhaps Sabrina is referencing all these exes in her song. There are no real identifying features to these men mentioned in the lyrics, though. She never goes into detail about any of those relationships, so even if she is referencing them on purpose, we don't get any more insight into what her time spent with them was ever like, because the song isn't really about them. It's about Sabrina being drunk and lonely. Beyond the fun of possibly finding an Easter egg, all these guesses are ultimately just pointless since they don't add anything to the work Sabrina is presenting. If all you see when you look at the output of Sabrina Carpenter is a bunch of men rather than Sabrina Carpenter, who exactly is the male-centered one here? I don't think that it's Sabrina. I'm glad we can all at least agree, though, that there are some running themes in Sabrina's work, especially her work over the last 3 years. Since 2022 at least, but especially since the release of Espresso in 2024, Sabrina Carpenter has proven herself to be an exceptionally consistent artist. In just a few years, she's managed to hone such a specific sound and image for herself that audiences can immediately spot a Sabrina Carpenter song, even when she's not the one writing or singing it. Like, for instance, when Taylor Swift released her album Life of a Showgirl a few months ago, and listeners, myself included, quickly declared that the song Would was actually just Taylor's attempt at making a double entendre-laden Sabrina Carpenter track, an attempt that, for the most part, was a flop. Would sounds like a song that's trying to replicate Sabrina's appeal, but it fails miserably, mostly because Sabrina didn't make it. It lacks her charm, her campy sense of humor, her tongue-in-cheek delivery. What Sabrina does, then, is something that other pop stars can't really do that effectively. Tell me why, then, One of the biggest points of criticism, or maybe even worse, concern, that I've seen lobbied at Sabrina since her album cover was released is the accusation that her entire image was manufactured by her label. Like, let's go back to that top comment from the Faux Moi subreddit post about the Lolita photo shoot. Look at how quickly this conversation devolves into claims about Sabrina not being a real artist and not having a lot of creative input in her work. The post is absolutely full of those comments, some of which have hundreds, if not thousands, of upvotes, despite claims about Sabrina's control over her pop career not being super relevant to the conversation these users are supposedly having. Yeah, Sabrina probably didn't have a whole lot of control over how the photos for that photo shoot turned out, but that's not because she isn't a real artist and has little creative control over her work. It's because it was a photo shoot for W magazine and Sabrina Carpenter doesn't work there. Like, what are we even talking about? Another commenter then writes, her entire product/persona, however, is highly sus to me. Like, after she switched labels, her entire shtick became completely different than what she did before. And then she rose to stardom. Her entire brand is manufactured 100%, and I get it, that's no different than other pop stars. Like, look at Ariana Grande. Same thing. Ariana Grande? The woman who frequently shares footage of her songwriting process, including videos of her mixing her own vocals. That Ariana Grande. What? There is literally footage of Ariana giving Max Martin tips on how to use Pro Tools. John Chu has also publicly talked about how impressed he was with Ariana's skills working in that software during the making of the Wicked soundtrack. So when you make this claim about Sabrina Carpenter being 100% manufactured, just like other pop stars, and your only other example is Ariana Grande, who is absolutely an active participant in the creation of her work, it just kind of looks like you saw a woman making pop music and immediately assumed that she had nothing to do with it. It is sexist. But let's talk about another claim here. After Sabrina switched labels, her entire shtick became completely different than what she did before, and then she rose to stardom. So what was Sabrina's first label? It was Hollywood Records, aka the Disney record label that's infamous for tightly restricting their artists' output, especially forcing them to maintain a child-friendly image while, for some reason, being such cheapskates that they essentially are unwilling to fund proper promotional campaigns for their releases, which greatly affects their artists' success.
This is my debut album.
On vinyl. Very rare, isn't it?
I don't even have it. That's how rare it is.
Only 200 made, given to record execs.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie.
Not given to you?
No. or maybe at the time, but I don't know. I moved a couple times in the middle.
Oh, so you might have had it.
Only 200 made? Damn.
Or less.
They really didn't give a fuck about me.
It is true that at the beginning of her career, Sabrina Carpenter had less creative control over her work than she wanted. She's talked about that. In a profile for Variety ahead of the release of Short and Sweet, she said, quote, "When it comes to having full creative control in being a fully fledged adult, I would consider this a sophomore album." It's also true that Sabrina wasn't as big of an artist until she switched labels, which is probably why she did that as early as she could. When Sabrina signed to Hollywood Records at 12 years old, she had a 5-album contract, yet managed to get out of it in 2021 and signed to Island Records after only releasing 4 albums. Her career started to blow up on her 5th album, her first with Island Records, and that's not a coincidence, nor is it a result of her new label making her into a star. It's a result of her no longer being on a label that was restricting her creativity and refusing to promote her work. Like, how do you look at Sabrina's pre-Island career, where Hollywood Records was only making 200 vinyl copies of her album, and then conclude that Sabrina was the problem? The fact is, Sabrina Carpenter is very involved in her work. With the exception of one song on her Christmas album, she's had a writing credit on everything released under Island Records. For emails why did I write it like that? For emails I can't send, she's credited as either the only person writing the lyrics or only one of 2 people for every track. On Man's Best Friend, she's not even just credited as a writer for every song, she's also a producer on every song and does most of her work credit co-writers and co-producers. Yes. But if they were the secret to her success, why is the work so consistent and tone in quality when her name is the only common denominator when you look at all the credits? And in addition to that, if Sabrina is so reliant on collaborators, why has one of her most famous gimmicks involved her changing the lyrics of the outro to a song based on her current location, something she has to come up with on relatively short notice? Does that seem like something a woman reliant on co-writers would set herself up to do? I don't think so. This whole Sabrina isn't actually in control of her work line is so frustrating because it so often gets used as this more woke sounding talking point to criticize the album cover, where people go, I'm not mad at Sabrina. I just know how record labels take advantage of women, so I'm sure the album cover wasn't even her choice. Some perverted man probably told her to do it because sex sells. Do you hear how patronizing you sound? Even if you think you're sparing Sabrina from being the target of backlash, perhaps because you recognize how participating in a hate campaign against a woman might not be a very progressive thing to do, you're still giving some non-existent man credit for her work, despite there being so much evidence that she is the one making the big decisions in her career as of 2021. I mean, Sabrina has openly talked about how her label and team didn't think Espresso would make a good single prior to the release of her album, but they trusted her to release it anyway. Do you expect me to believe, then, that Sabrina has that level of pull over her singles rollout, yet doesn't have final say over her own album artwork? That seems kind of ridiculous to me. In truth, a lot of Sabrina's recent moves have bucked tradition for her industry in ways that get completely overlooked by this manufactured pop star narrative. Likely because that narrative is built upon sexist assumptions about female performers more than it is any genuine assessment of what Sabrina Carpenter is actually doing. For one thing, the fact that Sabrina decided to release this album at this time is already kind of odd. And arguably, it's not the smartest business decision that she could have made. Even outside of any complaints about the male gaze or self-objectification, one of the biggest criticisms Sabrina received from Man's Best Friend upon announcement surrounded the mere fact that she's dared to release a new album in the first place while still promoting the last one. If she and or her team were so concerned about marketing, she could have, and honestly should have, held off on putting out a deluxe edition for Short and Sweet, then just waited for the hype for that album to die down before putting out a bigger reissue with new singles to prolong its success. The sound of Man's Best Friend is so similar to her last record that there was no real need for the albums to be considered separate projects, especially when there's so much expectation for female pop stars to reinvent themselves between every full-length release. Sabrina Carpenter has not yet done a reinvention, but she clearly isn't considering her work in the context of eras like most other pop stars, and especially like most record label executives. She told Rolling Stone in June of this year, "If I really wanted to, I could have stretched out Short and Sweet much, much longer, but I'm at that point in my life where I'm like, wait a second, there's no rules. If I'm inspired to write and make something new, I would rather do that. If I feel like I want to wake up one day and make a Busy Woman music video in 2 years, no one's telling me I can't. I'm in this weird zone right now where I just see the rules meaning less and less." Now, it's not like there's no precedent for a pop star to quickly follow up their first hit album with a second project meant to capitalize on that success. In the era of streaming and endless album variants, that's already become less common. But even in that tradition, Sabrina has done something different. She didn't make a bigger album than before, something meant to appeal to a larger number of people. She made something more focused than her previous release, with a more insulated writing and production process than she's ever done. There are only 4 people credited with writing or producing on this project. The credits feature the same names over and over and over again because this was not a record that got passed around the label just looking to create the next big hit. The next big hit was already on the first album, but Juno never got a music video or even a televised performance. You know what now does have a televised performance, though? Nobody's Son, which isn't even a single, nor have I ever heard it referred to as a fan favorite on the album. Sabrina Carpenter is so clearly just doing whatever she wants. In an interview for Apple Music, she said of her writing process, "My last album, Short and Sweet, was a record that I worked on for 2.5 years after I made an album called Emails I Can't Send, and it was really based off of the constructive criticism for Emails I Can't Send that I made Short and Sweet. You know, obviously it was also my life and my experiences that I was going through, but kind of taking into account, you know, the way that I really wanted to refine that sound in some of those pop songs into something very glossy. And I think this album was birthed the opposite way. It was sort of like, I felt like I had accomplished something that had something for everybody and they really liked it. And then I was like, now I'm gonna make this not just for me, but I'm not making it so I can appease and, you know, check all the boxes for everyone that liked this and for everyone that liked this and this about the last album." Even before that bit, when Sabrina mentions in the intro to the interview why she wanted to make this new album, her response indicates something very personal, saying, "It was really just this thing of, I think this is a chapter where I'm so meant to document, and I think this is a chapter I'm so meant to document, and it really represents a funny period in my life that I think I'll always look back on and remember exactly who I was at that time." This leads me to the very, very frustrating critique for this album cover, the claim that the image isn't empowering. This is also, if any of you watched Little Shop of Allie's video on the album cover, this is a lot of what it's about. So if you haven't watched that video and you're interested in this conversation, you should go watch Allie's video. But no matter what side anyone is on, the entire debate seems to be centered around this. This question about if the album cover or Sabrina's career in general is feminist, as if she's ever once indicated that it was supposed to be. Like, did I miss a press release? Did Sabrina Carpenter claim to be an activist? Did she say that her work is made with the purpose of deconstructing the patriarchy or challenging social norms? Because all I've heard her talk about in relation to her music is her sonic influences, her selection of collaborators, and, her life. What's so ironic to me about all this discourse is the fact that the same people who keep throwing around the male gaze accusations at Sabrina are unknowingly reinforcing a form of patriarchal gaze in their critiques of her. Here is another album that came out this year. It's called I Barely Know Her, and it's by Somber, an artist who absolutely has an audience made up of underage girls, which he is on record defending. Now, Somber got a bit of backlash a month or so ago for some of his onstage antics with said children, but I really haven't seen any discourse surrounding the actual content of the music. I listened to the album the other day, though, and I have to say, I found a lot of it quite creepy. I don't know the background. I haven't listened to any interviews that Somber's done, so I'm not sure how many different women or girls inspired these songs, or if they're even based on his real life. But the whole thing is essentially a breakup album where every track is Somber bemoaning a past relationship that was either extremely serious and committed, or that was never really a relationship at all, as both the album's title, I Barely Know Her, would suggest, along with the song We Never Dated, where Somber obsesses over a woman he never dated. The way that Somber talks about women throughout the album portrays him as someone who seems kind of possessive and also incredibly whiny. But when I've read or listened to reviews of the album, I haven't seen anyone pointing out what I would consider to be red flags in Somber's behavior. No one seems to be questioning lyrics like, "You're living free, but in a few years, I'll do you harm." Even negative reviews of the album focus on how unadventurous the sounds on it are, while positive reviews utilize words like vulnerable, self-reflective, or emotionally resonant. No one's worried about the messages the album's lyrics might be sending to its underage female audience, nor does anyone seem concerned about the blood on his shirt on the album cover. This is an album that's all about women who apparently broke his heart for not loving him anymore. Thus, I think it's kind of fair to ask, what is the blood supposed to represent? I haven't been able to find a single other person so much as questioning that. And I'm not bringing this up because I'm offended by the album or its contents. I understand that when you're writing music about your own life and feelings, stuff might get a little seedy sometimes. Art is ultimately just an expression of a perspective, and occasionally your perspective, if you're being truly honest, will out you as a bit of a weirdo. That's fine. Art is allowed to evoke uncomfortable feelings. If you're a guy, no one's debating whether or not this somber album is feminist or empowering to its young female listeners. Making something that's suitably progressive is not a threshold male artists have to pass to get taken seriously. Men are allowed to just be, to express themselves in whichever ways feel right in the moment because they're socially permitted to speak from a place of inner consciousness. They get to value their own experiences and feelings in ways that are personal and quote-unquote vulnerable, while women are expected to operate from a perspective that complies with the gaze that has been placed onto them. The ways in which Sabrina has been called upon to make music that's feminist is frankly dehumanizing. She wrote an album about how she feels. She put a cover on the album that visually expresses how she feels, and then a whole bunch of supposed feminists jumped online to tell her to shut up because how she feels isn't advancing the cause for the rest of us or something. Because we only care about what women have to say when they're not speaking for themselves, but on behalf of other women. A woman who enters the public sphere has to be ultra aware and interested in how other people are interpreting her every move, not just for her own sake, but for the sake of her entire gender. She needs to make music and music videos and album covers that are aimed at empowering other women, and thank God we all agree that empowerment anthems are super meaningful artistic expressions that are advancing the socio-political power of all women everywhere. So to all the people who are so upset that Sabrina Carpenter chooses to write music and make art that's personal to her and that reflects her own experiences in ways you might not find relatable, I have one question. Would you have rather she released Woman's World? Kinda seems like that's what you all wanted. Anyway, so Man's Best Friend was released August 29th. It's a pretty short album, about like 39 minutes. The whole album was written and produced by Sabrina, Jack Antonoff, Amy Allen, John Ryan, in a way that Sabrina said felt like a band. It has a 75 out of 100 on Metacritic. It debuted at #1. There are already quite a lot of variants. Well, I mean, not that much. Not as many as, like, Taylor Swift, but enough where I was like, ugh. This is my thing, again, with, like, the variant things. Oh, Ophi's here now. This is my thing with the variants. I'm okay with some, like, I don't know. I want, and I've talked about this before, I want there to be just, like, a statement image, especially for this, with, like, how much controversy this album cover caused. It's like, could that just be the image of the album? Do we have to have all these other ones, even if they look okay? I mean, first of all, this is the only one to me that actually looks like an album cover. You know, these other ones almost look like back covers, or just like photos that you would see on the insert. This is an album cover, but I guess other people want other options. I don't know. It's fine. Then she also released her Tears music video. Now, I mean, we talked about the Tears song a little bit. The video is a little bit different. It doesn't, like, totally follow the story of the song at all, but it's fucking incredible. It's so good. It stars Coleman Domingo, who also is the Cowardly Lion in the new Wizard of Oz for Good movie. He does a great job as a voice. I don't care for the animation of the lion. I wish they had used a puppet. I don't know, they made that whole big thing about how they planted all those flowers, that those aren't like CG flowers. It's like, we planted hundreds of thousands of flowers or whatever. And it's like, okay, but you couldn't get a puppet lion? You couldn't get more puppets throughout the whole movie? Whatever, we're not talking about Wicked again. But I did just, Coleman Domingo came up. Other than that, it is really influenced by, like, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is really cool. It has multiple endings, which I like in some ways. First of all, the original ending, the first ending, was the best one. But if you paid attention, if you kept going back to the video after, like, every couple days when she first released it, the ending would just change. There would be different versions of that final scene where the guy dies. And I like it. I like it from the stance of, like, there being variety and kind of giving people reason to go back to the video. But it also kind of annoys me as a YouTuber because I'm not allowed to do that. It was the same thing when Taylor Swift, when she got that controversy for the Anti-Hero music video where she stands on a scale and it says fat, and people were really upset about that. So then they edited it, and then you just didn't see the close-up. And I was like, okay, cool. but most people aren't allowed to change their video once they upload it. So like there definitely is some favoritism happening here at YouTube Studios. Pop stars are able to call up YouTube and be like, hey, we have a new version of the video that we'd like to upload, and none of the rest of us are allowed to do that. So I don't think it's fair. There's plenty of videos that I'd love to upload a different version of, but that's not something that I'm allowed to do. So it did kind of piss me off just on principle. But, oh well. I guess if you're Sabrina Carpenter or Taylor Swift, you can do it. She's also been performing a whole bunch. So this is her at Lollapalooza. She's done a lot of festivals. She brought out Earth, Wind, and Fire. She also brought out at the Austin City Limits Festival, Shania Twain and the Chicks, which has been really cool too to see not just Sabrina performing all the time and always kind of, mixing it up, giving her audiences something a little bit new, but also just the fact that she clearly is such a lover of music and of other musicians, and she wants to bring out other musicians that have inspired her in some way. And especially, like, she does have... She's a young audience. I don't think it's children. I think it's, like, young adults, but it's people who maybe aren't super exposed to, like, Earth, Wind, and Fire or Shania Twain or the Chicks. So I think that's also really cool too, that she is exposing her audience to the music acts that have inspired her, that aren't necessarily the most poppin' acts of their generation. She also is going to be the headliner of Coachella next year, which is... It's pretty crazy. I still hold... This is my thing too, where I love that Sabrina is doing it. I think that's great. But I'm like, if Sabrina can do it this early, I fully support Charlie XCX being kind of bitter about not being a headliner last year. Charlie XCX should have been a headliner. She shouldn't have necessarily been a headliner over Green Day. I was initially a little bit annoyed at Green Day, but I realized after a while, I was like, no, Green Day also deserves a headlining spot. But I am annoyed at Post Malone. I think Post Malone should have gotten bumped, and they should have let Charlie be the headliner for that night. But whatever, I'm over it. But it is just a little bit interesting that, like, so kind of early into Sabrina's... she's been making music for a long time, and she's been someone that I've been aware of for a long time, but straight up, part of the reason that I was aware of Sabrina early on is because of Girl Meets World, because I watched a few episodes of that, because I always like Boy Meets World. So that's why I knew Sabrina Carpenter. I think most people really did not know who Sabrina Carpenter was until Espresso came out, which was last year. And she's already headlining Coachella. Like, that is insane. Insane. And then she has now finally ended her tour last night. That was her last show. She started doing this thing where she was trading out her bodysuits like every night, and this was her final bodysuit. It says the end across the torso. It looks really cool, and it is like a cool little send-off to the tour. Here's all of the bodysuits. So that was kind of and also I have to say too, she's been doing this tour for like a year now, and I'm so glad that they fixed the lighting, because the first few shows I was like, why is everything so yellow? But this is her first like arena show. This is her first really big tour, and they got the handle of it eventually. The lighting definitely got a lot better. So she had this one became pretty iconic with a little lip print. She started doing them that were a little bit more built around the location that she was performing in. Those are all kind of basic though. Then we start getting some more interesting ones. These are all still kind of basic. But then we start getting ones like this with like the little sort of newspaper print on it. And then this one I really love with like the night sky, the city landscape. That looked really cool. And then like the handkerchief. I like that one too. And if you can see, she also has like stuff written on her stockings as well. This has like Pretty Girl Avenue on it. That's her as Wonder Woman. That was from her Halloween performance. That one just says Hollywood. Like, they're all super cute. And it is just fun too, like, especially with the towel and doing the reveal. It's a nice little touch. She also, in addition to... I should move this back over here. In addition to doing the different bodysuits every night, she does a different Juno pose, a different Juno position, as we've talked about. Now, some of them are obviously very sexual. Some of them are like incredibly sexual to the point where I'm like, she's kind of getting me in a way, you know? Like, I don't want to say anything disrespectful, but there are a few moments where I'm like, oh, wow. Anyway, but not all of them were sexual. And as time went on, they started to get growingly less sexual and just more silly. So here's one of my favorites. This is her doing the taxi position. That one is just cute. Then there was this one.
Have you ever tried this one?
Then there was this one.
Have you ever tried the 118 to the 405 to the 101 to the 170 to the 69?
And then there was, of course, this one. This one was from a couple nights ago. She finally recreated her man's best friend pose. Pulled her own hair. Didn't even have one of the dancers do it. So maybe there's some symbolism in that. But then her final one from last night, her very last show.
Have you ever tried this one?
Aww. That's real cute. She finally made it to the end. And then her VMA performance was also very good. She did tears. It was very like Christina inspired. Very Christina, very Britney, but also very, very upfront about her support for trans rights. We love to see it. Had a whole bunch of signs. Like, there's no ambiguity about it, which I do really appreciate, that she just has signs that are like, no, protect trans people. And she is so cute. She also hosted Saturday Night Live. She did a great job. She is very charismatic, very charming, great performer, even outside of, you know, obviously being a musician, but she really is, you can definitely feel the acting origins of her career. The fact that she started as an actress. She just got it all. She's got it all. And she's apparently going to star in an Alice in Wonderland inspired musical that I guess was like her idea, but it is being directed and written by Laureen Scafaria. I've never known how to say her name because I always thought it was Lauren and I thought it was just spelled weird, but then I heard someone else say it once and I guess it is Laureen. But she's the woman who directed and wrote Hustlers with Jennifer Lopez. She also wrote Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. So I am very excited for this film to come out. It sounds like they're still pretty early in the writing process, but I think it's gonna be amazing. And then she also nominated for a whole bunch of Grammys. Swifties have been harassing Laureen lately for what? What'd she do? Yeah, she is the one who did Hustlers. Interesting. But she's nominated for a bunch of stuff. Record of the Year and Song of the Year for Manchild. I don't love that song that much. That's definitely not what I would have picked from the album, but whatever. Album of the Year, Man's Best Friend. I don't think she should win. I do love Miss Sabrina, but I've been very clear about I think that Album of the Year should go to either Gaga, because I'm just a little monster, so I just want it to go to Gaga, or it should really go to Bad Bunny. But good for her for being nominated. Oh, she made a funny tweet about choosing gratitude instead of joking about the backlash. Wait, what backlash? Dumoy said she had been dating Joe Alwyn. They're being weird about it. Oh. Well, whatever. What does it matter? It's like, do the Swifties want her to get back together with Joe Alwyn? Is that, like, she broke up with him. They're done. He can't have a new girlfriend? That's kind of weird. Whatever. Then pop solo performance, Manchild. Quite honestly, I don't think any of these really should go to her, except for the music video. If she doesn't win Best Music Video, I'm going to scream. Oh, yeah, okay. If she doesn't win Best Music Video, that's fucked. The rest of these, I don't care that much about. I don't think that she's really the winner in any of these categories. I agreed last year when she won Pop Vocal Album for Short and Sweet. I thought that was appropriate. But Band's Best Friend, not when Mayhem's nominated. Sorry, Sabrina. Love you. But no, that's gotta go to Mayhem. But music video you can have. Music video, that one's all yours. But that brings us to the end of our Sabrina update. I know it's been a little different from the normal streams, but hopefully that was okay. And next week we will come back and we will do a normal Pop Girly News stream and with multiple new girlies. We do have some honorary Pop Girlies this week though. So first honorary Pop Girly Jacob Elordi. So this one, he didn't really do anything new this week, but I watched the Frankenstein movie. Like, I got off stream last Monday, watched Frankenstein, and I was like, oh, Jacob Elordi is it. I didn't know. Like, my apologies to Jacob Elordi. I did not recognize your game. I didn't know your game. I kind of did. Like, I've always liked Jacob Elordi. I've seen him in, like, Euphoria. I've seen him in Saltburn. I've seen him in... There's something else I watched him in. What else is he in? I didn't watch that kissing booth thing. But I've seen him in other things. And I've always thought that he was good, especially Saltburn. I was like, you know what? Most of that performance has to do with him just being like super hot. I don't want to objectify him, but that is kind of it. It's like the story of Barry Keoghan's character becoming just so obsessed with him. And I'm like, I get it. That is a good looking man. But he, you know, it's like there's not a whole lot of. Oh, Priscilla. That's the other one I've seen him in. Yep, Priscilla. I knew there was a third one. But I was like, he's great in Saltburn, but it is mostly, it's like, what is totally being asked of him as an actor? A decent amount. There's some emotional stuff in there with his character, but for the most part, it's just like, wow, look at him. Look at that man. So I maybe sort of like categorized him as just that in my mind. I was like, Jacob Elordi is just hot guy, you know? He's hot man. He's hot, tall man. He is very tall. He's incredible in that Frankenstein movie in ways that I fully had no fucking clue. Like, I truly was not familiar with your game, Jacob. And I'm not even sure that he was actually, like, fully aware of his own game. You know? Because I've seen him in some interviews talking about like the transformation process that he took for this. And I know, look at him in this picture. Yeah, I mean, look at him in Saltburn. But that's cute too. But he was talking about his process for getting in character as the creature in Frankenstein and the makeup stuff and how that really like helped him transform. And he was like, it was the most like comfortable I've ever been in my life. He was like, I felt like I wish I had an actual quote. I tried to find an actual quote before the stream, but I couldn't find one. But I know that I've seen him talk about it in a way where he was like, I felt like this was me for the first time. And I was like, and that's how it felt to watch you on screen, buddy. It really felt like you came alive. I've never quite seen I've almost never seen an actor really transform this way in such a way that I just was not expecting. Like even his voice, the way what he does with his voice in the movie, I was like, is that Jacob Elordi? That's him? But it is. He did a beautiful job. And I've become quite fond of him. And not necessarily in a Papa's Orchard kind of way. But also in somewhat of a Papa's Orchard kind of way. Like, it's not just all feelings of lust. Some of it is just genuine appreciation of him as, like, an endearing person. One thing that I was very, like, wow about, and I don't even know, it's like, what does this even mean? Apparently his wallpaper on his phone is of him and the actress who played Priscilla from years ago.
Oh, right now, my wallpaper is me and my beautiful friend Kaylee Smaney from Priscilla.
I adore her.
I love her. What a performance. Oh, right.
That's interesting. You did that movie like a couple years ago, and that's your wallpaper? Don't really have anything to say about it. I just thought it was interesting. But then our other pop girly for the evening, is he down bad? I don't know. That's what I can't figure out, because the way that he says it, he's like, my beautiful friend Kaylee. And I'm like, look, you've had 2 years, dude. If you were down bad for Kaylee, I think you could have gotten her. I find it very hard to believe that Jacob Elordi has problems getting women. But I'm like, is he just someone who, he just has those kinds of friendships with women, which I love. And I would love it if that's the answer. If he genuinely just has a lot of respect for his female friends and his female co-stars. Because I feel like most men, if they have a photo of a woman as their background, I'm like, oh, he's trying to fuck or he is fucking. But if he's not, if they're just genuinely friends, I'm like, oh my God, I love that. I love that for them. But I don't know. Look at him, he's hideous. He's not even hideous as Frankenstein, like, or as the creature. Like, even in that makeup, I'm like, yeah, I still would. In fact, maybe I would even more. He's an endearing person. And he's Heathcliff in the new Wuthering Heights, which I understand that some of the controversy with that casting, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to just looking at him. I'm gonna look at him so much. Anyway, our other honorary pop girly. This is the first time that we've had a duplicate, a repeat contender. Not contender, but a repeat honorary pop girly. But I gotta give it to Zohran Mamdani again. Not this man, to be clear, not him. But I just love this photo. So, if you weren't paying attention, Zohran Mamdani met with President Trump, now that he is about to be the governor of New York, on January 1st is when he gets sworn in. Nice and prompt in the new year. So he was meeting with President Trump, and the meeting apparently went incredibly. Trump just spent the whole fucking time, like, swooning over him. Like, I can't really even wrap my head around it. I didn't totally expect anything different, because I think that Donald Trump is someone who is just very taken by charming men. Miss Piggy robbed again. I mean, Miss Piggy is a pop girly. She's not even honorary. She needs to just be in the bracket. She needs to release a new album. But I kind of expected Trump to be taken by Zohran, because he just loves a charming fella. But even then, I didn't expect how taken he is by him, and how much he was just like, yeah, I think he's gonna do a great job. He's changed my mind on things. I'm like, after one meeting? One meeting? I mean, I'm sure he'll go back at some point. He doesn't remember things for very long, so he'll forget that he even liked Zohran in a week. But this was just an incredible moment in our culture.
Your answer to
especially this moment.
Stephen Nelson, he asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay, you can just say yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
Like, just pats him on the arm and says, I don't mind. And Zohran is actively calling him a fascist. What? I mean, there's so many layers to this. Number one, the fact that our president is so comfortable being called a fascist because he knows that he is one, which is terrifying. But also, it's like, he's not even... Normally, he would take offense to that, but he's like, yeah, just let him say it. He can do it. He pats him on the arm. I can't get over it. And there are so many moments in this interview, too, where there's one part where they ask Zohran about, like, why didn't you take a train or something? Why did you take a plane? That's not very green, is it? And then Trump, like, butts in and he's like, well, a plane is way faster, and he's a busy man. He's got things to do. He can't take a train or a bus all the way here. And he's like, I'll stick up for you on that one. I'm like, wow, he's going out of his way to stick up for Zohran Mamdani. At one point, Zohran answers a question, and then you can hear Trump, like, whisper to him. He's like, that was good. You did a good job. I'm like, what the fuck? Oh, the power of a charming man that Zohran does seem to be using for good. I love the fact that he also didn't even bend on it, because it's like Trump has now completely changed his mind about Zohran, and now he's like, I think he's going to be a great great mayor. He's going to change a lot of people's minds. Conservative people will even like him, and liberal people, they already like him. Like, he is fully just on Zoran's side. And then when Zoran gets asked, like, do you think Trump is a fascist? He's like, yes. He has bent nothing. He has conceded nothing. And has still managed to charm the president of the United States. I just can't. And then the next day, Trump walked out in an outfit that was a little bit more chic than anything he's worn before. And people were putting it together as like, maybe he's got a little crush. Maybe he wants to impress Zoran a little bit. Maybe he's dressing a little better now that he's got like a new man in his life that he wants to dress for. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. But congratulations to Zoran. And again, congratulations to New York City. I'm glad that you get this man. And I'm glad that America gets this man. Because again, it's like New York City can set the precedent for the rest of the country. And you would hope at some point that this would start setting a precedent for the rest of the Democratic Party. But they are a little bit slow on the on their improvements. But you know, oh well. He's here now. He's the mayor of New York now. At some point they'll have to catch up. Do I have the side by side of what? Of his new outfit? I don't think so, but I could probably find it. Am I the only one who finds this weird? I mean, the country is weird at this point. It is weird. The whole thing is weird. But we have to find joys where we can. And ultimately, it's like he had to meet with the president at some point. He is trying to run an entire city. And a huge city. Yeah, this is Trump in his new little fit that looks very much like something Zoran has worn at some point. But he looks better than he's looked in years. I can't wait till he's not the president anymore. Yeah, in the city the president has the most personal interest in. Yeah, for sure. But anyway, we will be back next week, and we will do all the girlies that we did not do today, because we only talked about Sabrina. And yeah, in the meantime, is there anyone new coming out this week? I don't know of any big new releases. So I guess just keep streaming Mayhem. When does the Spotify Wrapped, has that stopped yet? Has that stopped being calculated? When does that come out? I feel like we should all start getting our Spotify Wrapped stuff soon. I don't know though. But anyway, please make the Sabrina segment. You did a video essay. I'll probably clip it out at some point. I don't know when I'll get around to it, but at some point I'll do it. But other than that, I'll see you guys next week. Okay, bye.